Mafia's vows. The broken altar. Hold open. 100 words. The bullet didn't make a sound at first. Emma stood beneath the crystal chandelier, champagne flute trembling in her fingers when the glass exploded. Alexander's hand crushed her spine as he slammed her to the marble floor. Screams, plaster raining, the smell of gunpowder. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not tonight. Not at the opera house where Manhattan's elite gathered in silk and diamonds. But someone wanted her dead. Someone wanted Alexander broken. And as she ran through kitchen smoke with her husband's gun firing behind her, Emma realized the wedding that saved her life 6 months ago had just painted a target on her back. If your heart is already racing, hit that like button right now and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. New York, Los Angeles, Houston, Miami. I want to see how far this story travels. Subscribe and turn on notifications because what's coming next will leave you breathless. The champagne tasted like ash. Emma's fingers tightened around the delicate flute as she stood in the grand foyer of the Metropolitan Opera House, watching Alexander work the room with the precision of a man who'd spent his life navigating dangerous spaces. 6 months. That's how long she'd been Emma Vulov. 6 months since the altar. 6 months since Greg left her standing in white lace in front of 300 witnesses, and Alexander Vulov, stranger, businessman, Shadow, had offered her a deal that felt more like a trap than a rescue. Mrs. Vulov. The mayor's wife appeared at her elbow, all teeth and expensive perfume. Your husband is quite the philanthropist. That donation to the children's hospital was very generous. He believes in giving back, Emma said, because that's what wives said. What trophy wives said. She'd learned the script fast. The woman's eyes traveled over Emma's emerald silk gown, lingering on the diamond choker that felt more like a collar. You're very lucky. Lucky. The word sat wrong in Emma's mouth. Lucky was winning the lottery. Lucky was finding $20 in an old coat. What Emma had was a contract. Marriage in exchange for security. A father for Lily. A shield against the debt collectors who'd been circling her one-bedroom apartment like vultures. She wasn't lucky. She was bought. Emma. Alexander's voice cut through the crowd, low and commanding. He appeared beside her, his hand finding the small of her back. The heat of his palm burned through the silk. The mayor wants to introduce us to the city council. She followed him through the sea of tuxedos and evening gowns, past marble columns and gold leaf, into the heart of Manhattan power. Alexander moved like he owned the room. Maybe he did. Emma still didn't know the full extent of what her husband controlled. He'd given her a house, a credit card with no limit, and a security detail that followed her to the grocery store. But he hadn't given her answers. Mr. Vulov, a man with silver hair and a pinstripe suit, extended his hand. I hear you're expanding your shipping interests to the West Coast. Consolidating, Alexander corrected, his accent barely there but unmistakable when he wanted it to be. The Pacific routes are more stable. Emma let the conversation wash over her. Business talk, money talk, the language of men who moved millions with a handshake. She sipped her champagne and tried not to think about the pile of medical textbooks gathering dust in her old apartment. The nursing degree she'd been 3 semesters from finishing before Lily's father died and the world caved in. Your wife is quiet tonight, the silver-haired man observed, turning his attention to Emma with the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. My wife is observant, Alexander said smoothly. She prefers listening to performing. It wasn't true. Emma used to talk. Used to laugh loud and wrong in dive bars with her study group. Used to argue about treatment protocols and patient care until 2 in the morning. But that Emma had died somewhere between the funeral and the eviction notice. This Emma, the one in emerald silk, just nodded and smiled. The crack came without warning. Emma's champagne flute exploded in her hand. Glass shards sprayed like diamond dust. Wine splashed across her chest. She stared at her palm, confused, watching red spread across her skin. Was that blood? Was that... Down. Alexander's voice wasn't a suggestion. It was a command from somewhere primal, somewhere military. Before Emma could process, before she could scream, his hand clamped on the back of her neck and he drove her to the marble floor. The impact knocked the air from her lungs. Her cheek hit cold stone. Alexander's body covered hers, crushing her into the ground. Chaos erupted. Chaos. Screams tore through the opera house. The polite murmur of Manhattan's elite shattered into animal panic. Plaster rained from the ceiling. Emma couldn't see, couldn't breathe. Alexander's weight pressed her flat, his chest against her spine, his arm wrapped around her head. "Stay down." His mouth was at her ear, breath hot, voice ice. "Do not move." "Alex?" Her voice came out strangled. "Dmitri, secure the exits." Alexander was shouting in Russian now, barking orders to someone Emma couldn't see. His hand moved, reaching inside his tuxedo jacket. When it reappeared, it held a gun. Black, sleek, very real. Emma's brain stuttered. Her husband, the man who wrote checks to children's hospitals, was armed at a charity gala. 2 shots cracked from above. Alexander's body tensed. He raised the pistol and fired twice toward the balcony. The sound was deafening, a physical force that rattled Emma's skull. Someone screamed. Something heavy hit the floor 30 feet away. "Move!" Alexander hauled Emma to her feet, his grip on her wrist like iron. "Kitchen, now!" They ran. Not the elegant exit of frightened guests, full sprint through swinging doors marked staff only. Emma's heels caught on her gown. She kicked them off, running barefoot across tiles slick with spilled wine. Chefs scattered, pans clattered. Alexander dragged her past industrial ovens and steel counters, his gun still raised, scanning every shadow. The back door burst open. Cold air hit Emma's face. Rain. The alley was dark, wet, lined with dumpsters and delivery trucks. A black SUV idled at the far end, headlights cutting through the downpour. But the driver wasn't Dmitri. Emma froze. Her feet stopped moving. Her breath stopped. Because behind the wheel, pale and sweating and wrong, was Greg, her ex-fiancé, the man who'd left her at the altar, the man who'd disappeared 6 months ago without explanation. "Get in!" Greg's voice cracked. His eyes were wild, darting between Emma and the alley entrance. "They're right behind you." Alexander shoved Emma toward the SUV. "Move!" "That's Greg," Emma breathed. "Alex, that's—" "I know who it is." Alexander opened the rear door and pushed Emma inside. "Get in the car, Emma." She stumbled into the back seat. Alexander dove in after her, slamming the door. Greg stomped on the gas before the door fully closed. The armored SUV fishtailed on wet pavement, tires screaming, and launched forward. Emma twisted in her seat, looking back at the opera house. Figures in black were pouring from the service entrance. Running. 3 men. 4. More. "Who?" Emma's voice died. She turned to Alexander. "Who were they shooting at?" Alexander didn't answer. He was checking his weapon, ejecting the magazine, counting rounds with mechanical efficiency. His tuxedo was ruined, torn at the shoulder, spotted with plaster dust. There was blood on his collar. Not his. Someone else's. "Alex." Emma's hands were shaking. The adrenaline was wearing off, replaced by something colder. "Who were they shooting at?" "You." Greg's voice came from the front seat, tight and scared. "They were shooting at her." Headlights flooded the rear window. A black van, no plates, windows tinted, slammed into their bumper. The impact threw Emma forward, her seatbelt locked. Alexander caught her shoulder, steadying her. "Hold on," he said, too calm, and pressed a button on the armrest. A compartment opened. Inside was a submachine gun. Emma's stomach dropped. "Alex, I promised I wouldn't make you cry, Emma." Alexander checked the weapon with practiced hands. "I didn't promise I wouldn't make them bleed." He rolled down the window. Wind roared into the cabin, carrying rain and the smell of burnt rubber. Alexander leaned out, bracing against the doorframe. The gun kicked to life, a rattling roar that shredded the night. Emma curled into a ball, hands over her ears, eyes squeezed shut. The pursuing van swerved, tires popped, metal shrieked. Through her closed eyelids, Emma saw orange light bloom. An explosion. Heat washed over the SUV. Alexander pulled himself back inside, soaked and breathing hard. He rolled up the window. The silence that followed was worse than the gunfire. "Safe house," Alexander said to Greg. "Not the estate. They'll be watching the gates." "Safe house?" Emma's voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. "What safe house?" "We go underground." Alexander was already on his phone, speaking rapid Russian. "Until I know who betrayed us." Emma looked at her hands. They were covered in wine and glass dust. One thumb was bleeding where a shard had cut deep. The diamond ring on her finger, the one Alexander had slid on 6 months ago in a courthouse ceremony that felt more like a business transaction, caught the passing streetlights. Lily. Emma's heart seized. Where's Lily? The estate is a fortress, Alexander said, but something flickered in his eyes, something Emma had never seen before. Fear. Dmitri has 20 men on the grounds. She's safe. You don't know that. Emma's voice rose. You just said someone betrayed you. What if she is safe? Alexander's hand found hers, gripping tight. I would burn this city to ash before I let anyone touch her. Greg's eyes met Emma's in the rearview mirror. He looked sick. I didn't know they'd go after the kid, he whispered. I swear, Emma, I didn't. You knew? Emma's blood turned to ice. You knew about this? Greg's mouth opened, closed, opened again. They came to me, said the debt was transferred, said I had to. Alexander's hand shot forward, grabbing Greg by the throat. The SUV swerved. Greg choked, one hand on the wheel, the other clawing at Alexander's grip. Alex, stop. Emma grabbed Alexander's arm. He's driving. You'll kill us. That's the idea. Alexander's voice was dead calm. He sold you out, Emma. He put a target on your back. And he just saved us, Emma said through gritted teeth. Let him breathe. Alexander held for another second, then released. Greg gasped, coughing. The SUV straightened out. Talk, Alexander said. Now. Who sent you? Ivanov? The name came out strangled. Nikolai Ivanov. The temperature in the car dropped. Alexander went very still. Who's Ivanov? Emma asked. A ghost, Alexander said quietly. A dead man. He's not dead. Greg was shaking. He's very much alive, and he wants you to know he's coming. The safe house was a warehouse in the meatpacking district. No windows. Steel door 3 inches thick. Greg parked inside and the door rolled shut behind them, sealing them in concrete and shadows. Alexander got out first, gun raised, clearing corners like a soldier. Emma followed, barefoot on cold cement, her ruined gown dragging behind her. The space was sparse. Crates, a table, monitors on the far wall showing feeds from cameras Emma couldn't see. Phone. Alexander turned to Emma, hand extended. I need to call Mrs. Reynolds. I need to hear Lily's voice. Your phone is a tracking device. Alexander's tone left no room for argument. Give it to me. Emma pulled the phone from her clutch. Alexander took it and threw it to the concrete floor. He crushed it under his heel. Plastic cracked. Glass shattered. You just cut us off, Emma said, her voice hollow. I kept us alive. Alexander turned to Greg, who was trying to make himself small against the wall. Sit. Greg dropped into a metal chair bolted to the floor. How did you know about the hit? Alexander stalked toward him. Ivanov doesn't talk to gamblers. A woman came to me. Greg's words tumbled out fast. Tall, blonde, scar on her neck, said the debt was transferred to Ivanov's syndicate. Gave me a phone, told me to track Emma. Emma's stomach turned. You were following me? They threatened to take my kidneys. Greg looked at Emma with desperate eyes. I'm sorry. God, Emma, I'm sorry. But tonight, she said the gala was the kill zone. Said taking out the wife would break the wolf. He looked at Alexander. I couldn't do it. I couldn't let them kill her. Alexander pressed the gun to Greg's knee. One reason I shouldn't pull this trigger. Alex, no. Emma stepped between them, hands up. He saved us tonight. If you kill the only link we have to Ivanov, we lose. Alexander's jaw worked. The gun didn't move. We need him, Emma said quietly. You taught me that. Information is currency. Slowly, Alexander lowered the weapon. He walked to the monitors and pressed a button. Dmitri. Status. Static crackled. Then, perimeter secure, boss. No breach. Emma's knees went weak. She grabbed the edge of the table. Lily was safe. For now. Ivanov blames my family for his exile 10 years ago, Alexander said, staring at the monitors. He swore he'd wait until I built something worth destroying, then take it piece by piece. He turned to Emma. That's why we're here. You and Lily. You're what's worth destroying. Emma looked at Greg, still shaking in the chair. Something he'd said was circling her brain. A woman, blonde, scar on her neck. The piano teacher, Emma said suddenly. Miss Vanna. Alexander's head snapped toward her. What about her? Greg said the woman had a scar on her neck. Vanna always wears turtlenecks, even in summer. Alexander's expression changed. The cold calculation shifted to something worse. Recognition. Horror. Dimitri is with Lily, he said, but there was no certainty in his voice now. If she's already inside, Emma couldn't finish the sentence. Alexander grabbed a fresh magazine for his gun. Get up, he told Greg. We're leaving. Protocol says we stay here until... Protocol is dead, Alexander's roar echoed off concrete. If that woman is near my daughter, I will tear the estate apart brick by brick. They ran for the SUV. The safe house wasn't safe. The fortress wasn't secure. And somewhere in the dark, a piano was playing. Emma closed her eyes as they hit the highway, Alexander pushing the speedometer past 110. She thought about Lily's face that morning, sticky with syrup, laughing about something the puppies did. She thought about the knife she'd seen on Vanna's kitchen counter when she'd stopped by last week. Long, curved, wrong. Faster, Emma whispered. Alexander's foot hit the floor. The rain hammered down. The city blurred past, and in the distance, barely audible over the engine, Emma heard it, a single piano note. Plink. The iron gates of the estate loomed out of the darkness, like the jaws of some sleeping beast. Alexander hit them at 60 miles per hour. Metal screamed. The SUV bucked and shuddered as the gates buckled inward, tearing from their hinges. Emma's head snapped forward against the seatbelt. Her teeth clacked together hard enough to draw blood. The vehicle fishtailed up the gravel drive, throwing stones against the undercarriage like shotgun pellets. The house stood ahead, every window dark, no lights, no movement, the kind of silence that meant something had already gone wrong. Alexander was out before the SUV fully stopped, gun raised, moving toward the service entrance with the fluid precision of someone who'd done this before. Emma scrambled after him, her bare feet hitting wet grass. The rain had stopped, but everything was soaked, cold, wrong. Stay behind me, Alexander said without looking back. That's my daughter in there. Which is why you stay behind me. Greg stumbled out of the driver's seat, pale and shaking. I didn't sign up for, Shut up. Alexander tested the service door. Unlocked. He pushed it open with his foot, sweeping the gun left, then right. Emma, close. Greg, if you run, I will find you. They slipped into the kitchen. The smell hit Emma first. Not blood, not gunpowder. Something sweeter, chemical. She knew that smell from her clinical rotations. Benzodiazepines. Someone had gassed the house. Mrs. Reynolds was on the floor by the sink, unconscious but breathing. Emma dropped beside her, fingers going to her neck, pulse steady, pupils responsive. She's drugged, Emma whispered. Not hurt. Alexander was already moving through the foyer. Two guards slumped against the wall, weapons still holstered. Their chests rose and fell. Sleeping. Vanna took down a fortress without firing a shot, Alexander said, his voice barely audible. Then they heard it. Plink. A single piano note from upstairs. F sharp. Emma knew because Lily had been practicing that note for weeks, getting the fingering wrong every time. Plink. Alexander's eyes met Emma's. He pointed up, mouthed, I go loud, you go quiet. Emma nodded. Her heart was trying to punch through her ribs. Alexander moved toward the main staircase, the one that creaked, the one everyone heard. Emma peeled off toward the servants' stairs, the narrow passage the staff used. Her feet made no sound on the carpet runner. Plink. The music room door was cracked open. Pale moonlight spilled across the hardwood floor. Emma pressed herself against the wall, inching forward. Through the gap, she could see Lily sitting at the piano in her purple pajamas, her small hands trembling on the keys. Standing behind her, one hand resting on Lily's shoulder, was Vanna. She wore all black. Tactical pants, a tight shirt, boots designed for running or fighting. In her other hand was a knife. Not a kitchen knife. A karambit, curved like a talon, pressed against the soft skin of Lily's throat. Emma's vision tunneled. Everything that wasn't that knife disappeared. Her medical training kicked in with cold precision. Carotid artery, jugular vein, both right there, both fatal if severed. She calculated pressure points, angles of attack, the distance between the door and the piano. 12 feet. Too far. Too... slow. You play it wrong, little one, Vanna said softly. Her accent was thick, Eastern European. It's F-sharp, yes, but you must feel the note, not just press. I'm trying. Lily's voice was so small. I want my mama. Mama is busy. Papa too. They left you here with strangers. They don't care about little girls who play piano badly. Emma's hand went to the small of her back. Alexander had pressed something into her waistband in the car, a snub-nosed revolver, compact and deadly. She'd forgotten about it until now, her fingers closed around the grip. Papa Alex cares, Lily whispered. He said he'd always come back. Papa Alex is home. Alexander's voice came from the main hallway. He stepped into the doorway, both hands raised, empty. Let her go, Vanna. Vanna smiled. In the moonlight, her teeth looked sharp. The wolf finally arrives. Nikolai said you would come. He said you cannot help yourself. You see the trap and walk into it anyway because you think you are invincible. I'm not invincible, Alexander said, his voice even. I'm desperate. There's a difference. Then beg. Vanna pressed the blade deeper. A tiny bead of blood appeared on Lily's neck. Nikolai wants to hear the great Alexander Vulov beg. Emma watched Alexander's face. She'd seen him angry before, cold rage, controlled violence. But this was different. This was a man being torn apart from the inside. His shoulders sagged, his head dropped. He sank to his knees. Please. The word came out broken. Please, Vanna, take me, kill me, but let the child go. Vanna laughed. This is too easy. The wolf has no teeth. Emma stepped out from the shadows. She'd been trained to save lives, not take them. But as she raised the revolver with both hands, finger curling around the trigger, she found it didn't matter. Some instincts ran deeper than training. Hey! Vanna's head turned. Her eyes went wide. She'd been watching Alexander, watching the main entrance. She hadn't expected the wife. Emma fired. The recoil nearly broke her wrists. The sound was a physical thing, a punch to the chest. The bullet took Vanna in the shoulder, spinning her around. She screamed and the knife clattered to the floor. Run, Lily! Alexander was already moving, launching himself across the room. Lily dove under the piano, scrambling on hands and knees. Alexander tackled Vanna mid-turn, slamming her into the hardwood with enough force to crack the boards. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution. He struck her throat, her temple, her ribs, each blow precise and devastating. Vanna went limp. Emma's hands were shaking so violently she dropped the gun. It hit the floor with a dull thud. She couldn't feel her legs, couldn't feel anything except the ringing in her ears and the chemical taste of adrenaline. Lily! Alexander was on his feet, pulling their daughter from under the piano. He wrapped her in his arms, pressing her face against his chest so she wouldn't see Vanna's body. You're safe. You're safe. I've got you. Lily was crying, silent tears that shook her whole body. Emma stumbled forward and collapsed against them both, her arms circling them, holding on like they might disappear. Is she dead? Emma heard herself ask. Unconscious. Alexander's voice was raw. She'll live long enough to talk. Emma looked at the gun on the floor, at her hands, at the blood, Vanna's blood, splattered across the white keys of the piano. She'd shot someone. She'd pointed a weapon at another human being and pulled the trigger. The woman who'd spent 3 years learning to save lives had just tried to end one. We have to go, Alexander said, pulling back to look at Emma's face. His eyes were wide with something between shock and awe. This was just the first wave. Ivanov knows we're vulnerable now. Go where? Emma's voice sounded distant. Russia. Alexander stood, lifting Lily with him. We go to the source. We end this in his house, on his ground. That's insane. Staying here is suicide. Alexander looked at the broken window, the open door, the compromised fortress. Every minute we remain, we're targets. We move, we hunt, we strike first. Emma looked around the music room. This was supposed to be their safe place. The room where Lily practiced scales and Alexander read contracts by the fireplace, where they'd almost felt like a normal family. Now it was a crime scene. Pack a bag, Alexander said. 10 minutes. Essentials only. I hit her in the shoulder, Emma said, staring at the blood. I was aiming for her chest. Alexander's hand found her chin, tilting her face up. You saved our daughter's life. That's what matters. I'm a nurse. You're a mother. He kissed her forehead, hard and quick. Now move. The private jet sat on the tarmac at a small airfield 40 minutes from the estate, engines already whining. Emma clutched Lily against her chest, the girl's face buried in her neck. They'd thrown together a bag in darkness, clothes, documents, Lily's stuffed rabbit, the essentials of a life packed in under 10 minutes. Dmitri met them at the base of the stairs, his face carved from granite. The house is secure. Medical team is treating Mrs. Reynolds and the staff. No permanent damage. And our guest? Alexander asked. Zip-tied in the cargo hold, she's starting to wake up. Good. Alexander's smile had no warmth in it. We'll have a conversation at altitude. Greg was already on board, strapped into a seat near the back, staring at nothing. He looked like a man who'd aged 20 years in 3 hours. Emma carried Lily into the main cabin. Cream leather seats, mahogany trim, the trappings of wealth that felt obscene after the violence. She laid Lily on the sofa, covering her with a cashmere blanket. Where are we going, Mama? Lily's voice was hoarse from crying. On a trip. To Disneyland? Emma's throat closed. Somewhere else, baby. Somewhere cold. The plane lurched forward, taxiing toward the runway. Emma strapped herself into the seat beside Lily, holding her hand. Through the window, she watched New York disappear. The lights, the skyline, the illusion of safety. Alexander stood near the cockpit, speaking in rapid Russian to Dmitri. His hands moved as he talked, slicing the air, pointing, commanding. He looked different now. Harder. The businessman veneer was gone, burned away by gunfire and fear. The jet climbed, punching through clouds. Lily fell asleep almost immediately, exhausted by terror. Emma envied her that escape. Her own mind wouldn't stop replaying it, the weight of the gun, the kick of the trigger, Vanna spinning, the blood. You need to drink something. Alexander appeared with a glass of amber liquid. Whiskey. Emma took it and downed it in one swallow. It burned all the way down, cutting through the shock. I killed someone tonight, she said, staring at the empty glass. You wounded someone. There's a difference. How many people have you killed, Alex? He didn't answer right away. He took the glass from her hands and set it aside, then sat down across from her. Do you really want to know? No. Emma closed her eyes. Yes. I don't know. 14, Alexander said quietly. In my life. 14 people who tried to take something that wasn't theirs. My territory, my family, my freedom. Some of them I still see when I sleep. Some of them I don't remember at all. Emma opened her eyes. Does it get easier? No, you just get better at living with it. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. But you're not me, Emma. You don't have to become this. I shot a woman. You defended your daughter. Any jury in the world would call it justified. We're not going to a jury, are we? Emma looked toward the back of the plane, where Vanna was being held. We're going to Russia to kill someone. Alexander's silence was answer enough. I need to understand, Emma said, her voice hardening. I need to know who Nikolai Ivanov is and why he wants us dead. Alexander sat back, his face falling into shadow. 10 years ago, my father ran the shipping operations from here to Moscow. Legitimate on paper, less legitimate underneath. Ivanov was his partner. They controlled the ports, the routes, the money. Then Ivanov got greedy, started skimming, started making deals with people my father had explicitly banned. Chechens, war criminals. What happened? My father exiled him, stripped him of his territory, his titles, everything, sent him back to Russia with nothing but his life. Ivanov swore revenge, said he would wait until my father was dead, until I had something to lose, then he would take it all. Emma looked at Lily sleeping peacefully, unaware that her existence had made her a target. Your father's dead now. 2 years ago. Heart attack. Alexander's jaw tightened. And I have everything to lose. The plane hit turbulence. Emma's stomach dropped. Through the window, she could see nothing but darkness. They were over the Atlantic now, suspended between one world and another. Tell me about Russia, Emma said. Tell me what we're walking into. Chaos, Alexander said simply. Petersburg is beautiful and brutal. The police are corrupt. The government is for sale. And Ivanov has been building his empire while I was in America playing businessman. He thinks I've gone soft. Have you? Alexander looked at her. Really looked at her, like he was seeing through skin and bone to something deeper. I was trying to, for you, for Lily. I wanted to be the man who wrote checks to hospitals instead of ordering bodies into rivers. But that man got his wife shot at tonight, so no, I haven't gone soft. I was just sleeping. And now? Now the wolf is awake. A door opened at the rear of the plane. Dmitri stepped out, his expression grim. She's talking. Says she has information you'll want to hear. Alexander stood. Stay here. No. Emma was on her feet. If we're doing this, if we're hunting this man, I need to know everything. Emma, I shot someone tonight, Alex. I crossed a line I can't uncross. Don't protect me from the consequences now. Alexander studied her face, then nodded slowly. Stay behind me. Don't speak. Let me work. They moved through the cabin to the cargo area. Vanna sat zip-tied to a cargo hook, her shoulder bandaged, but blood still seeping through. Her face was pale, sweat beading on her forehead. Pain and fear made her look younger, almost vulnerable, but her eyes were still sharp when she saw Emma. The little nurse, Vanna said, her accent thicker now. You have better aim than I thought. Where is Ivanov? Alexander didn't sit, didn't move closer. He stood in the doorway like an executioner. You'll never find him. Then you're useless. Alexander turned to leave. Wait! Vanna's voice cracked. Wait, I can give you something? I'm listening. Kronstadt, the old Soviet naval fort. That's where he operates. It's an island, heavily guarded. You can't touch him there. And why would you tell me this? Vanna's laugh was bitter. Because I'm bleeding, and you have doctors. Because Nikolai promised me glory and gave me a bullet. Because I am tired of being a weapon for someone else's war. Emma stepped forward before she could stop herself. You put a knife to a 7-year-old's throat. I was following orders. That's not an excuse. No, Vanna agreed, meeting Emma's eyes. It's an explanation. In Russia, we don't have the luxury of morality. We survive. We do what we're told, or we die. Alexander moved closer, crouching so he was eye level with Vanna. Tell me something I can use. Tell me how to get to him. There's a ball, 3 days from now, winter solstice, the Catherine Palace. Ivanov is hosting. He's inviting the 5 families to announce himself as the new kingpin. Vanna's breathing was getting shallower. He wants witnesses. He wants the world to see him claim what he thinks is his. A public event, Alexander said slowly. Witnesses. Security. He'll feel safe there, untouchable. Vanna's eyes were starting to glaze. That's when you strike. When the wolf is surrounded by sheep. Dmitri appeared with a medical kit. She needs treatment or she'll bleed out in an hour. Alexander stood. He looked at Emma. Your call. Emma stared at Vanna. This woman had terrorized her daughter, had pressed a blade to innocent skin. Part of Emma, the part that was still a mother, still human, wanted to let her bleed. But another part, the part that had spent 3 years learning to heal, couldn't watch someone die when she had the skills to prevent it. Give me the kit, Emma said. She knelt beside Vanna and opened the medical supplies. The bullet had gone through the shoulder, entry and exit wounds, no bone fragments visible. Emma cleaned the wounds with antiseptic, her hands moving on autopilot. Pack the wound, apply pressure, dress and bandage. Why are you helping me? Vanna asked, her voice weak. Because I'm not you, Emma said, taping the gauze in place. And I'm not going to become you. The rest of the flight was a blur of fitful sleep and dark thoughts. Emma dozed in her seat, Lily curled against her side, while Alexander spent hours in the cockpit going over maps and schematics with Dmitri, planning, strategizing, preparing for war. When Emma woke, pale dawn light was filtering through the windows. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Beginning descent into Pulkovo Airport. Local time is 0600. Temperature is -15 Celsius. Emma looked out the window. Below she could see St. Petersburg spreading out like a frozen dream, gold domes and gray buildings, the Neva River cutting through it all like a scar. It's beautiful, she whispered. It's a graveyard, Alexander said from across the aisle. He'd changed clothes during the flight: black jeans, a heavy wool coat, boots designed for snow. He looked Russian now, not American, like he'd shed one skin and put on another. "Are you ready?" he asked. Emma looked at Lily still sleeping, then at her own hands. Clean now, but she could still feel the ghost of the gun's weight. "No," she said honestly, "but I don't think that matters anymore." The plane touched down hard, jolting Emma's teeth. They taxied to a private hangar far from the main terminal. Through the window, Emma could see 3 black SUVs waiting on the tarmac, men in heavy coats standing beside them. "My people," Alexander said. "The ones I trust. Can you trust anyone here?" "We're about to find out." They disembarked into cold that felt like a physical slap. Emma's breath crystallized instantly. Lily whimpered against her chest, burrowing deeper into her coat. Alexander moved ahead, speaking Russian to the men. One of them, massive, bald, with a spiderweb tattoo creeping up his neck, embraced Alexander like a brother. "Volk!" the man said, slapping Alexander's back. "You returned from the dead." "The dead are stubborn, Sergei." Sergei's eyes slid to Emma. No warmth, just cold assessment. "And this is the American wife, the baggage that caused all this trouble." Emma stiffened. Alexander's hand found hers, squeezing a warning. "Don't engage." "She saved my life," Alexander said, his voice dropping to something dangerous. "Show respect or find a new job." Sergei's expression shifted. He looked at Emma again, this time with something like grudging acknowledgement. "My apologies, Mrs. Vulov." They were hustled into the SUVs. Emma sat in the back with Lily, watching St. Petersburg unfold around them. Gold and gray. Beauty and decay. The city looked like it couldn't decide if it wanted to be a museum or a battlefield. "Where are we going?" Emma asked. "Underground," Alexander said from the front seat. "Vasilyevsky Island, the bunker." They drove through narrow streets lined with buildings that looked centuries old, past the frozen river, past golden domes that caught the weak sunlight. Finally, they pulled up to what looked like an abandoned warehouse. The SUV drove directly into a freight elevator. The doors closed. They descended. Down into darkness. The elevator opened into a space that looked like it had been carved from the bedrock itself. Concrete walls. Low ceilings. The air smelled like earth and old metal, but someone had tried to make it livable. Persian rugs on the floor, tapestries on the walls, a makeshift kitchen in one corner. "This is home?" Emma asked. "This is survival," Alexander said. He set Lily down gently. "Nadia will get you settled." Emma blinked. Their housekeeper from New York stepped out of a side room, looking tired but professional. "Mrs. Vulov, Miss Lily, I've prepared a room." "How?" Emma started. "Separate transport," Alexander said. "I sent her ahead yesterday, along with essentials." "You knew this would happen." "I knew it was possible." Alexander's expression was unreadable. "Go with Nadia. Get warm. I have work to do." Emma wanted to argue, wanted to demand answers, to scream about being dragged halfway around the world into a concrete tomb. But Lily was shivering in her arms, and Nadia was already moving toward a doorway, and Emma was so tired her bones ached. She followed. The room was small but warm, a bed with thick blankets, a space heater humming in the corner, children's books stacked on a crate. Someone had tried to make it feel less like a prison cell. Emma laid Lily on the bed and tucked her in. The girl was already falling back asleep, exhausted by travel and terror. "Sleep, baby," Emma whispered, kissing her forehead. She stepped back into the main area. Greg was being escorted by 2 guards toward what looked like a holding cell. Vanna was on a stretcher, being carried toward what Emma assumed was a medical area. Dmitri was unpacking weapons on a table, guns, knives, things Emma didn't have names for. And Alexander stood in the center of it all, staring at a holographic map projected on the wall. The Catherine Palace. Streets, guard positions, exit routes. Emma walked up behind him. "Tell me the plan." "The plan is you and Lily stay here where it's safe." "That's not a plan. That's a cage." Alexander turned to face her. His eyes were hard, the softness she'd seen on the plane gone. "Emma, I am walking into a room full of people who want me dead. I am going to kill a man in front of witnesses and political power brokers. This is not a place for you. You need me. I need you alive. Then teach me how to stay that way. Emma stepped closer, lowering her voice. You said we do this together. You said I'm your partner. So stop trying to protect me and start using me. Alexander stared at her for a long moment. Then he turned to Sergei. Get Yuri. Tell him we need to train someone fast. Train her for what? Sergei asked. Sleight of hand, Alexander said. The wife is going to kill Nikolai Ivanov. Emma's blood turned to ice. What? Alexander pulled her aside, away from the others. Ivanov is diabetic, type 1. Severe. He carries an insulin pump. You want to poison him. I want to swap his insulin cartridge with potassium chloride. It causes cardiac arrest. Looks natural. No gunshots. No struggle. A ghost death. Emma's medical training kicked in immediately. The concentration would have to be exact. Too little, and he just gets sick. Too much, and it's obvious. Can you do it? Emma thought about Lily's terrified face, about the knife at her throat, about the piano stained with blood. Yes. Then we have 3 days to make you into an assassin. Sergei was still staring at them. This is insane. You're going to send an amateur to do a professional's job? I'm sending my wife to deliver a peace offering, Alexander said. While I negotiate my surrender and distract every guard in the room. No one will be watching her. They'll all be watching me. What if she fails? Then we all die. Alexander looked at Emma. Together. The next 48 hours blurred into a nightmare of training and preparation. Yuri, a wiry man with scarred knuckles in the hands of a magician, taught Emma how to palm small objects, how to brush against someone and make a switch without them noticing. Bump, apologize. Move away, Yuri said in heavily accented English, demonstrating over and over. Your hands do the work while your mouth does the distraction. Emma practiced with vials of colored water until her fingers cramped. She practiced blindfolded. She practiced while Sergei's men shouted at her, trying to break her concentration. Again, Yuri would say every time she fumbled, a mistake kills you. At night, Emma would collapse beside Lily in their small room, every muscle aching. The girl would curl against her, asking when they could go home. Soon, Emma would lie. Very soon. Alexander barely slept. Emma would wake at 3 a.m. to find him in the main room, studying maps, talking on encrypted phones, coordinating movements she didn't understand. The businessman was completely gone now. This was Volk, the wolf, cold and calculating and utterly focused on survival. On the third morning, Nadia brought Emma a garment bag. For tonight, she said simply. Emma unzipped it. Inside was a dress that made her breath catch. Ice blue silk, fitted to the waist, flowing down in a dramatic train. It was beautiful and terrifying, the kind of dress that screamed money, vanity, and helplessness. I can't wear this, Emma said. You must, Nadia replied. You are the trophy wife, scared, submissive, bringing her husband's enemy a gift while he begs for mercy. That is the role. Emma touched the silk. Sewn into the left sleeve, hidden by a delicate stitch, was a pocket, just big enough for a small vial. The dress is a weapon, Nadia said quietly. And so are you. Eyes. By evening, the bunker was a flurry of activity. Men moving weapons, cars being fueled, final checks on equipment and exits and backup plans. Emma sat in front of a mirror while Nadia did her makeup. Heavy, dramatic, the kind that would make her look like a woman trying too hard to please. Alexander appeared behind her, reflected in the glass. He'd changed into a suit, expensive, dark, perfectly tailored, but he wore it like armor, not clothing. You look terrified, he said. I am terrified. Good. Use it. Ivanov will expect fear. Give him what he expects while your hands do the unexpected. Emma met his eyes in the mirror. If this goes wrong, it won't. Alex, if it does. If I fail. Promise me Lily gets out. Alexander's hand found her shoulder. His grip was tight enough to hurt. We all get out. Or none of us do. Sergei appeared in the doorway. Cars are ready. Emma stood. The dress whispered against the floor. She felt like she was walking to her own execution. Maybe she was. They loaded into the limousines, Emma and Alexander in the lead car, Sergei and 3 guards in the second. Dmitri and the rest following behind. Greg had been left in the bunker under guard. Vanna, too, recovering in the medical area. As they drove through St. Petersburg toward the Catherine Palace, Emma watched the city slide past. People walking, shops open, normal life continuing while she prepared to commit murder. "Do you remember your vows?" Alexander asked quietly. Emma turned to look at him. "What?" "Our wedding. In the courthouse. Do you remember what I promised you?" "You promised to protect me." "I promised to protect you," Alexander agreed. "But I failed. I brought you into this world and now it's trying to kill you. So tonight, I'm making a new promise." "What promise?" "That after tonight, after Ivanov is dead and the threat is gone, I'm giving you a choice. Stay or go. If you want to take Lily and disappear, I'll make it happen. New identities, money, freedom. You never have to see me again." Emma stared at him. "You're offering me a way out." "I'm offering you what I should have offered at the altar. A real choice." The limousine turned through massive gates. Ahead, the Catherine Palace rose out of the darkness like something from a fairy tale. Baroque blue and white walls, gold trim that caught the floodlights. It was breathtaking. It was their battlefield. "I don't want out," Emma said as the car rolled to a stop. Alexander looked at her, surprise flickering across his face. "I want through," Emma continued. "I want to survive this, together. So let's go kill this ghost and go home." Alexander's expression cracked. For just a second, the wolf disappeared and she saw the man underneath, scared, desperate, clinging to hope. Then he pulled his mask back on. The door opened. Cold air rushed in. "Show time," Alexander said. They stepped out into the freezing night, up the stairs, through security checkpoints where guards with metal detectors waved them through, into the grand hall where hundreds of guests mingled beneath crystal chandeliers and gold-leafed ceilings. And there, at the far end of the room, seated on what looked like a throne, was Nikolai Ivanov. He was nothing like Emma expected. Not a scarred thug or a gaunt killer. He was fat and jovial, eating pastries, laughing with the people clustered around him. He looked like somebody's grandfather. Until you saw his eyes. Dead black and empty. "Remember," Alexander whispered as they moved through the crowd. Scared, submissive, broken. Emma's hand found the hidden pocket in her sleeve. Inside was a vial of clear liquid that looked exactly like insulin. She thought of Lily sleeping in the bunker. She thought of the knife at her daughter's throat. She thought of the gun in her hand and the blood on the piano. And she walked toward the monster wearing her husband's defeat like a costume, carrying death in her sleeve like a gift. Nikolai Ivanov saw them coming. His smile widened. "Alexander," he called out, his voice wet and wheezing. "You came to my party after all." Emma's fingers touched the vial. The room seemed to hold its breath, and somewhere deep in the marble palace, a clock began to strike midnight. Night. To be continued in Part 3. The plan is in motion. Emma is walking into the lion's den with poison in her pocket and fear in her heart. Will she be able to make the switch? Will Alexander's surrender be convincing enough? Drop a comment telling me if you think they'll pull this off or if it's all about to explode. And let me know what state you're watching from. I want to see this story reach every corner of the map. Hit that like button and subscribe because Part 3 is where everything burns. The clock's final chime died in the vaulted ceiling of the Catherine Palace. Emma's heart hammered against her ribs so hard she thought everyone in the room could hear it. The vial in her sleeve felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Every step toward Nikolai Ivanov was a step deeper into a nightmare she couldn't wake from. Alexander walked beside her, his posture all wrong, shoulders hunched, head slightly bowed. The confident stride she'd come to recognize was gone, replaced by something that looked like defeat. He was playing the part perfectly, too perfectly. It made Emma's stomach turn. The crowd parted as they approached the throne. Whispers followed them like smoke. Emma could feel eyes on her, judging, assessing, waiting to see the great Alexander Vulov brought low. Nikolai set down his plate of pastries and wiped his fingers on a silk napkin. Up close, he was even more grotesque. Fat rolled over his collar, his tuxedo strained at the buttons. But those eyes, those dead black eyes, tracked their approach with predatory intelligence. "Alexander," Nikolai said, his voice a wet wheeze. And the famous American wife. How kind of you to grace my celebration. Alexander stopped 10 feet from the throne. He didn't look up. Nikolai, I came to talk. To talk? Nikolai's laugh sounded like phlegm rattling in his throat. You came to beg. Let's not pretend otherwise. I'm tired, Alexander said quietly. Tired of running. Tired of looking over my shoulder. I want out. The room went silent. This was it. The moment everything hinged on. Emma's hand moved toward her sleeve, fingers touching the hidden pocket. Not yet. Wait for the opening. Out, Nikolai repeated, leaning forward in his throne. And what exactly are you offering me, little wolf? Everything. The shipping routes, the docks, the contacts, all of it. In exchange for safe passage back to America, for me and my family. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Emma kept her eyes down, playing the terrified wife. But she was watching Nikolai's waistline, looking for the telltale bulge of the insulin pump. There. Clipped to his belt on the left side, partially hidden by his jacket. You offer me what is already mine, Nikolai said, standing with a groan. He waddled down from his dais, each step deliberate. I took your docks yesterday. I burned your warehouses. You have nothing to trade. He stopped in front of Alexander, shorter, but somehow larger. Emma could smell him now, expensive cologne fighting a losing battle against sweat and sickness. Look at you, Nikolai sneered, poking Alexander's chest with a fat finger. My brother feared you, called you a demon, but you're just a dog on a leash. His eyes slid to Emma. She shrank back, clutching Alexander's arm, playing the role terrified, helpless, everything Nikolai expected. And this, Nikolai said, reaching out to grab Emma's chin. His fingers were sticky with sugar. His grip was painful. The prize. The nurse who tamed the wolf. Please, Emma whispered, forcing tears into her eyes. Just let us go. We'll disappear. You'll never hear from us again. Let you go? Nikolai leaned closer. His breath smelled like decay. I think I'll keep you instead. A souvenir. You can play piano for me. I hear your daughter is quite talented. At the mention of Lily, Alexander's whole body went rigid. Emma felt it, the violence coiling in him, ready to explode. This was the dangerous moment. If he broke character now, they were dead. Please, Nikolai, Alexander said, his voice cracking. He dropped to his knees. The room erupted in shocked murmurs. Emma's breath caught. The great Alexander Vulov on his knees before his enemy. It was theater. It had to be theater, but it looked so real. Alexander grabbed Nikolai's hand and kissed the ring on his finger. Take everything. Take the money. Take the territory. Just leave my wife and child alone. I'm begging you. Nikolai threw his head back and roared with laughter. His belly shook. His whole body convulsed with mirth. He was intoxicated by the sight of his enemy groveling at his feet. Emma moved. She stumbled forward as if to join her husband's plea, her hand brushing against Nikolai's side. Right where his jacket fell open, her fingers found the insulin pump. 3 seconds. That's all she had. Snap. Pop the reservoir latch. Slide. Pull the cartridge out. It fell into her palm, then into her sleeve. Slide. Drop the vial from her sleeve into the pump. Click. Snap it shut. 3 seconds. A lifetime compressed into 3 heartbeats. Get off me, Nikolai snarled, shoving Alexander away. His hand backhanded Emma. The blow caught her cheekbone, sharp and stinging. She cried out and fell to the marble floor, the real insulin cartridge pressing into her palm. Filth, Sharawaim. Filth, Nikolai spat. He didn't check his pump, didn't notice anything wrong. Why would he? He'd just humiliated his greatest rival in front of everyone who mattered. Alexander scrambled to Emma, helping her up. Are you okay? I want to leave, Emma sobbed into his chest. She could feel the stolen cartridge in her hand, evidence that would kill them if found. Please, Alex, I just want to go home. Get out, Nikolai waved a dismissive hand. Run back to your hotel. I'll decide tomorrow whether I let you live. But tonight, he turned to address the crowd. Tonight, I celebrate. Alexander pulled Emma toward the exit. They moved fast, but not too fast. Defeated. Humiliated. The picture of broken people. They reached the doors. The cold air hit Emma's face. She wanted to run, wanted to scream, but she kept walking, one foot in front of the other, until they reached the limousine. The door closed behind them. The car pulled away from the palace. "Did you do it?" Alexander breathed into her ear. "Yes," Emma whispered, opening her palm to show him the real insulin cartridge. "Good girl." Alexander's transformation was instant. The defeated man vanished. The wolf returned. "Driver, airport, now." The limousine accelerated. Emma looked back at the Catherine Palace, its windows blazing with light. Inside, Nikolai Ivanov was probably eating cake, raising toasts, celebrating his victory. His insulin pump would detect the rising blood sugar, calculate the dose, inject the solution. Potassium chloride, cardiac arrest. "How long?" Alexander asked, pouring Emma a drink from the car's bar. "Depends on his blood sugar. 10 minutes, maybe 15. Alexander checked his watch. Just enough time to reach the airfield. The phone in the limousine rang, not Alexander's cell, the car phone, a hard line built into the vehicle. Alexander stared at it. Only 3 people had this number. He picked it up. "Vulov." Silence. Then a voice that made Emma's blood freeze. "Hello, Papa Alex?" "Vanna." Alexander's face went white. "You're in a cell in the bunker." "Was in a cell," Vanna corrected. Her voice was strained, weak, but triumphant. "Your American security is predictable. Dmitri is strong, but not immune to a hidden blade in a boot heel." Emma's hand flew to her mouth. "Dmitri." "He's alive," Vanna continued, "bleeding on the floor of your bunker. But alive. I took his phone, his keys, and I'm looking at your daughter right now." The world tilted. Emma grabbed Alexander's arm. She's lying. She has to be lying." "Put Nadia on," Alexander said, his voice deadly calm. A pause. Then screaming in the background. A woman's voice. Russian. Terrified. Then silence. "Nadia is indisposed," Vanna said, "as is Sergei's entire skeleton crew. You really should have left more guards, Vulov, but you brought everyone to the palace. Big mistake." "What do you want?" Alexander's hand was crushing the phone receiver. "A trade," Vanna said. "You think you were clever at the ball? Nikolai's head of security saw everything on the surveillance cameras. He watched your wife's little magic trick, rewound it, analyzed it. Very impressive sleight of hand, by the way." Emma's stomach dropped through the floor of the car. "They haven't told Nikolai yet," Vanna continued. "They're waiting for my signal. I can warn him to disconnect the pump right now, or I can let him die. Your choice." "Name your price," Alexander said through gritted teeth. "The jet, with me on it, and the girl." "No," Alexander snarled. "Then I make the call," Vanna said simply. "I warn the palace. They lock down the gates. You never leave the grounds. Nikolai lives. You die in the snow. And I kill the girl anyway before I disappear." Alexander covered the mouthpiece. He looked at Emma. His eyes were wild with calculations, scenarios, desperate mathematics. "Lily isn't on the jet," Emma whispered. "She's at the bunker. She thinks we brought Lily to the airport." Understanding passed between them. Vanna was bluffing about having Lily in her hands. But she wasn't bluffing about warning Nikolai. If she made that call, the palace would become a death trap. The gates would close. They'd be hunted through the streets of St. Petersburg until Ivanov's men found them. And Nikolai would survive. "You have 5 seconds," Vanna said. 4, 3. "Deal," Alexander said. We're 5 minutes out. Don't make the call." He hung up. "Alex," Emma said, panic rising. "What are you—" "She's at the airfield with Dmitri bleeding out. She thinks Lily is on the jet. She thinks she has leverage." Alexander opened a compartment under the seat and pulled out a rifle case. "We're not going to the airport." "What?" "Driver, pull over." The limousine slowed to a stop on a dark access road, snow piled on either side. No lights, no witnesses. "She's waiting at the airfield," Alexander said, assembling a sniper rifle with mechanical precision. "She has the phone. She has Dmitri. If we drive there, she sees us coming. She makes the call to the palace. Ivanov disconnects the pump. We lose." "Then what do we do?" Alexander stepped out of the car into the snowbank. The wind whipped his coat. He loaded the rifle and looked through the scope, scanning the darkness. "We cut the power," he said. Emma followed him out. "What?" "There." Alexander pointed to a telephone pole a quarter-mile down the road, a transformer box attached to the lines. "If I take out the grid, the cell towers in this sector go down. No signal. Vana can't call the palace. That cuts our communications too. We don't need communications. We need time." Alexander looked at her, snow catching in his dark hair. "Nikolai ate the cake. His blood sugar is spiking right now. The pump is calculating. In 10 minutes, he'll be dead. I just need to silence the world for 10 minutes. He raised the rifle, aimed. The shot cracked across the frozen landscape. Sparks showered in the distance. The transformer exploded in a cascade of orange light. The distant town flickered and died. Darkness swallowed everything. "Now," Alexander said, throwing the rifle back in the car. "Now we go to the airfield and end this." Swag. The private airfield was a black void. No runway lights. No tower illumination. The power outage had killed everything. But the Gulf Stream was still there, sitting dark and silent on the tarmac, emergency lights glowing faintly through the windows. Alexander parked the limousine on the access road, headlights off. They approached on foot through knee-deep snow. Emma's dress was soaked, frozen stiff at the hem. Her feet were numb in her heels. But she didn't feel the cold. She felt only the countdown in her head. 7 minutes since the power cut. 3 minutes until Ivanov's heart stopped. The jet's door was open. The stairs were down. No movement. No sound except the wind. "Stay behind me," Alexander whispered. He'd drawn his pistol. The rifle was too unwieldy for close quarters. They climbed the stairs. The cabin was dark, lit only by the red emergency lighting. It looked like the inside of a dying animal. Emma smelled blood before she saw it. Dmitri was slumped against the galley wall, his face gray as concrete. A tourniquet was tied around his thigh, soaked through with blood. His eyes were half open, barely conscious. "Dmitri," Emma whispered, dropping beside him. She opened the medical kit Alexander kept in the jet. "Stay with me." "Behind you," Dmitri choked out. Emma spun. The lavatory door burst open. Vana lunged out, not with a gun but with a shard of mirror glass wrapped in cloth, a makeshift knife. She moved with desperate speed, the speed of someone with nothing left to lose. She was aiming for Emma's throat. "Alexander!" Emma screamed. Alexander tried to bring the pistol around, but the cabin was too narrow, the angle too tight. Vana was already on Emma, the glass raised. Emma threw herself backward over Dmitri's legs. The glass shard slashed through the empty air, catching her shoulder instead of her throat. Her coat tore. Feathers exploded into the air. Vana raised the shard for a second strike. The shot was deafening. It didn't come from Alexander. It came from the floor. Dmitri, half dead and bleeding, had pulled a backup piece from his ankle holster. His hand shook violently, but at point-blank range he didn't need accuracy. The bullet took Vana in the stomach. She gasped, stumbled backward, looked down at the spreading red stain with confusion. The glass fell from her fingers. Alexander was on her in a heartbeat. He grabbed her by the throat and slammed her against the bulkhead hard enough to dent the metal. It wasn't a fight. It was an execution. He struck her temple, her throat, her ribs. Clinical, efficient, brutal. Vana crumpled to the floor, unconscious or dead. Emma couldn't tell which. "Emma," Alexander said, pulling her up. "Are you hurt?" "I'm fine." Emma was already back at Dmitri's side, ripping open his pant leg. The wound was bad. Femoral artery nicked but not severed. The tourniquet had saved his life, but he was running out of time. "I need light. Alex, I need—" Alexander pulled a tactical flashlight from his belt and shone it on the wound. Emma packed it with clotting gauze, pressing down with all her weight. "Stay with me, Dmitri," Emma commanded. "You don't get to die. Not after shooting her. Not after saving us." Dmitri managed a weak smile, blood on his teeth. "The girl, where—" "Still at the bunker," Alexander said. Vana was bluffing. "Good," Dmitri breathed. "Good." Emma worked fast. IV line, saline, pressure on the wound. Her hands moved on autopilot, muscle memory from clinical rotations taking over. She wasn't the trophy wife anymore. She was a nurse. This was her battlefield. "He's stable," Emma said after 20 minutes, But he needs a hospital, surgery, transfusion. We can't go to a Russian hospital, Alexander said. We fly. I have a medical team in Helsinki. 40 minutes. Emma looked at Vanna's body. Is she alive? Barely. Alexander checked her pulse. She'll live long enough to bleed out if we don't treat her. Emma stared at the woman who'd terrorized her daughter, who'd tried to kill her twice now. Part of her wanted to let Vanna bleed, wanted to watch the light fade from her eyes. But that wasn't who Emma was. Give me another kit, Emma said. She stabilized Vanna with the same clinical detachment she had used on Dmitri. Pack the wound. Stop the bleeding. Keep her alive. Why? Vanna whispered, looking up at Emma with glazed eyes. Because I'm not you, Emma said, taping the bandage in place. Alexander went to the cockpit. Greg was there, hiding under the co-pilot seat, wearing a headset he must have scavenged. Is it over? Greg's voice was a squeak. Get up, Alexander ordered. Can you fly this thing? I have a license for a Cessna. It has wings and engines, Alexander cut him off. You're flying. I'll co-pilot. You can fly? I can take off. Landing we'll figure out later. The engines roared to life. The jet shuddered, shaking off snow. Emma strapped herself in beside Dmitri, holding his hand. Through the window, she could see lights flickering back on in the distance, the power grid rebooting. Alexander appeared in the cabin doorway. Emma, phone, check the news. She pulled out the burner phone he'd given her. The screen glowed. Signal restored. She navigated to Russian news sites. Breaking news banner. Tragedy at Catherine Palace. Emma clicked the link. Nikolai Ivanov, prominent businessman, dead at 64. Cause of death, massive cardiac arrest. The breath Emma had been holding for the last hour finally escaped. It was done. Ivanov was dead. The threat was gone. Alex, she called toward the cockpit. It's confirmed. Through the open door, she saw Alexander's shoulders sag. Just for a second. Then he straightened up, flipping switches. Wheels up in 30 seconds, his voice came over the intercom. The jet lurched forward. Emma felt the G-force as they accelerated down the dark runway. The nose lifted. The ground fell away. They punched through clouds into clear sky. Below them, St. Petersburg was a grid of golden lights. Beautiful and cruel. Somewhere down there, a king was dead. Somewhere down there, Vanna's blood was still cooling on the bunker floor. Emma looked at her hands, stained with Dmitri's blood. Vanna's blood. But underneath, her wedding ring caught the emergency lighting. She'd killed a man tonight. Not directly, not with her hands, but she'd swapped that cartridge. She'd delivered the poison. Nikolai Ivanov's death was on her soul now, mixed with all the other things she'd done to survive. You okay? Alexander appeared beside her, crouching down. No, Emma said honestly. But we're alive. We're alive, Alexander agreed. He took her blood-stained hand and kissed the knuckles. And we're going home to some. But they weren't going home. The flight to Helsinki was 40 minutes of white-knuckle terror as Greg fought to control a jet he barely understood how to fly. The Gulf Stream bucked through turbulence. Alarms beeped. Alexander barked instructions from the co-pilot seat while Greg sweated through his shirt. Emma sat with Dmitri monitoring his vitals. His pulse was weak but steady. He'd lost a lot of blood, but he was fighting. Vanna was strapped to a seat in the back, unconscious, her breathing shallow. Runway in sight, Greg's voice cracked over the intercom. I can't see the lights. The snow is too thick. Instruments only, Alexander commanded. Trust the sensors, hands on the throttle, ease back. The landing gear deployed with a mechanical thud. Emma grabbed the armrest. Through the window, she could see nothing but white. They hit the tarmac hard. The jet bounced, slammed down again, and skidded. Emma was thrown against the harness. Her teeth clacked together. The tires screamed as the brakes engaged. They slid sideways. The tail swung out. For one terrible moment, Emma thought they were going to flip. Then slowly, agonizingly, they straightened out. Slowed. Rolled to a stop. Silence. We're alive, Greg's voice came through the speakers, on the verge of tears. Holy God. We're alive. The cabin door opened from outside. Finnish paramedics rushed in, speaking rapid English. They took Dmitri first, then Vanna. Professional, efficient. No questions about why two people had bullet wounds. Alexander must have paid them very well. Emma stumbled down the stairs into freezing Finnish air. Her legs almost gave out. Alexander caught her, holding her upright. "You did it," he said into her hair. "You killed Ivanov. You saved Dmitri. You survived." "We survived," Emma corrected. They were driven to a safe house, a modern glass apartment overlooking the frozen harbor. Clean, quiet, safe. Greg was sedated and put in a guest room. Vanna was transported to a private clinic. Dmitri went to surgery. Emma stood in the bathroom, staring at her reflection. The woman looking back was unrecognizable. Makeup smeared, hair wild, dress torn and stained with blood. She looked like she'd walked through hell. Maybe she had. The door opened. Alexander entered, stripped to the waist, his torso covered in scars. He turned on the shower, a massive rainfall setup, and steam began to fill the room. "May I?" he asked, reaching for her zipper. Emma nodded. He unzipped the ruined dress. It fell to the floor. The costume of the trophy wife, discarded. They stepped into the shower. The hot water hit Emma like absolution. Alexander didn't try anything. He just picked up soap and a sponge and began washing her. Her hands first, scrubbing away the blood, then her arms, her neck. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I promised you a palace and gave you a war." "I chose the war," Emma said. She took the sponge from him. "Now, let me wash you." She scrubbed his chest, his arms, his back, washing away gunpowder and fear. They stood under the water for a long time, not speaking, just existing. When they finally stepped out, Emma wrapped herself in a robe and walked to the living room window. Snow was falling over Helsinki, peaceful, quiet. Her phone buzzed. A call from the bunker. Alexander answered, then handed it to Emma. "Mommy?" Lily's voice. Emma's dam broke. Tears came hot and fast. "Hi, baby. Hi, sweetheart. Are you okay? Nadia said you were working." "I'm okay. Pop and I are coming home soon." "Did you beat the bad guys?" Emma looked at Alexander, at the blood still under her fingernails, at the exhaustion in his eyes. "Yes, baby. We beat the bad guys." "Can we get a puppy when you come home?" Emma laughed through her tears. "Yes, we can get 2 puppies." She handed the phone back to Alexander. He spoke to Lily for another minute, making promises about gifts and swift returns. When he hung up, he looked at Emma. 2 puppies. You owe me. I saved your life. I infiltrated a palace. I think I earned negotiating rights." Alexander smiled, actually smiled. Then his phone rang again. Different ringtone. He looked at the screen and his expression changed. "It's Sergei," he said, answering. "Da?" Emma watched his face as he listened. Watched the color drain from it. Watched his jaw tighten. "When?" he asked in English. "How many?" He hung up, looked at Emma, and for the first time since she'd known him, Alexander Vulov looked genuinely afraid. "What is it?" Emma asked. "Ivanov had a contingency," Alexander said quietly. "If he died, instructions were to be executed automatically, orders already in motion." "What kind of orders?" "Bounties. 10 million rubles on my head, 5 million on yours." Alexander's hands were shaking. "Every contract killer, every 2-bit thug in Eastern Europe just got our photographs and our last known location." Emma's knees went weak. "We killed him. It should be over." "It's never over," Alexander said, "not with men like Ivanov. He wanted to make sure that even from the grave, he could destroy me." "How long do we have?" "The text went out 20 minutes ago." Alexander pulled her toward the door. "We have to move, now. The airport. We get on a plane to anywhere that isn't Europe." They grabbed their bags, ran to the car, but as they reached the lobby of the safe house, the power cut out. Darkness, then gunfire. The windows of the lobby exploded. Glass rained down. Alexander tackled Emma to the floor, covering her body with his. "Back exit," he shouted. "Move!" They crawled through the darkness as bullets chewed through furniture and walls. Emma's hands were bleeding from the glass. Her ears were ringing from the gunfire. They reached the service stairs and ran down. 3 flights. Burst out into a snowy alley. A black van was idling at the end, not theirs. Wrong. Men poured out, 4 of them, 5. Guns raised. Alexander pushed Emma behind him and raised his pistol, but they were surrounded. No exit, no backup. "Drop the weapon," one of the men said in heavily accented English. "Ivanov sends his regards from hell." Alexander looked at Emma, at the fear in her eyes, at the life they'd built and the daughter waiting for them in a bunker in Russia. He dropped the gun. "Knees," the man ordered. Alexander sank down. Emma followed, her hands raised. The snow soaked through her pants, the cold bit into her skin. This was it. After everything they'd survived, after the opera house and the palace and the flight through hell, it was going to end in a Finnish alley with hired killers putting bullets in their heads. The men raised their weapons. Emma closed her eyes. And then the night exploded, not with gunfire, with an explosion. The black van erupted in flames, metal shearing apart like paper. The shockwave threw the gunman to the ground. Emma's ears went dead from the blast. Through the smoke and fire, a figure appeared, tall, moving with military precision, holding a rocket launcher. Dmitri. He was supposed to be in surgery, but there he was, limping on his injured leg, wrapped in bandages, but very much alive and very much armed. "Get in the car," he shouted, pointing to an SUV that had pulled up behind him. Alexander grabbed Emma and ran. They dove into the back seat. Dmitri threw the launcher aside and climbed into the passenger seat. The driver, one of Sergei's men, floored it. "You're supposed to be in surgery," Alexander said. "Surgery can wait," Dmitri said through gritted teeth. He was pale, sweating, clearly in agony. "You needed extraction more than I needed anesthesia." "How did you know where we were?" "I put a tracker in your phone, old habit." Dmitri looked back at them. The bounty went active the moment Ivanov's heart stopped. "Every hunter in 10 countries is coming for you. The airport is compromised. The borders are watched. You can't run fast enough." "Then what do we do?" Emma asked. Dmitri and Alexander looked at each other. Some wordless communication passed between them. "We go back to Russia," Alexander said finally. "To the source. To Ivanov's vault." "That's suicide," Emma said. "Staying here is guaranteed death," Alexander countered. "But in Russia, in his territory, we can find his kill switch, the proof that he put out the bounty. We destroy it. We destroy the contract. The hunters stop hunting. And if we can't find it," Alexander's silence was answer enough. The SUV raced through the snow toward a secondary airfield. Behind them, sirens wailed. Smoke rose from the burning van, and somewhere in the darkness, more hunters were already closing in. Emma looked at her hands, still covered in blood, still shaking. She'd thought killing Ivanov would end the nightmare. Instead, it had just made the monster angry enough to reach back from death and try to drag them down with him. "How much time do we have?" Emma asked. "Hours," Dmitri said. "Maybe less. Every minute you're alive, someone is getting closer." The plane was a cargo transport, stripped bare, no luxury. They boarded and the engines fired immediately. No safety checks, no flight plan, just escape. As they climbed into the sky, Emma looked out the window at Helsinki disappearing below. She thought about Lily waiting in the bunker, about the promise she'd made to get 2 puppies, about the normal life that kept slipping further and further away. "I'm scared," she whispered to Alexander. He pulled her close. "So am I." It was the first time he'd admitted it out loud. The first time the wolf had confessed he was just a man. And as they flew east into the rising sun, back toward Russia, back toward the ghost's vault, Emma realized they'd crossed a line they could never uncross. They weren't running from the fire anymore. They were flying straight into it. End part 3. The twist hits like a freight train. Killing Ivanov didn't end the war. It escalated it beyond anything they imagined. Now there's a bounty on their heads and hunters closing in from every direction. Do you think they can survive going back to Russia? Can they find Ivanov's kill switch before the contract killers find them? Drop your predictions in the comments. Tell me what state you're watching from. I want to know how far this story has traveled. Hit that subscribe button because part 4 is going to be the fight of their lives. The cargo plane shook like it was trying to tear itself apart. Emma gripped the webbing of her jump seat as the aircraft bucked through another pocket of turbulence. No windows back here in the hold. No way to see how close they were to Russian airspace. Just the howl of engines and the metallic groan of stressed rivets. Dmitri sat across from her, his injured leg elevated on a crate. His face was the color of old newspaper. Blood was seeping through his bandages again. He needed surgery, not a flying coffin hurtling toward the most dangerous city in Eastern Europe. Alexander was in the cockpit with the pilot, coordinating their approach. They couldn't land at Pulkovo, too exposed, too watched. Instead, they were heading for an abandoned Soviet airbase 40 kilometers outside St. Petersburg, a place that officially didn't exist anymore. The plane banked hard left. Emma's stomach lurched. She tasted bile. "How you holding up?" Dmitri asked. His voice was weak, but he was trying to smile. "I've been better." Emma looked at his leg. "You should have stayed in Helsinki. You're going to bleed out." "Better to bleed out fighting than die in a hospital bed." Dmitri shifted, wincing. "Besides, you saved my life twice now. Figure I owe you at least one more rescue. Keep count, and we'll never break even." The cockpit door opened. Alexander emerged, his face carved from stone. "We land in 5 minutes. Sergei has a convoy waiting, but we have a problem." "Of course we do," Emma said. "Ivanov's vault is in Kronstadt, the island fortress. We knew that. What we didn't know is that his second-in-command, a man named Viktor Kozlov, locked down the entire facility when Ivanov died. No one in, no one out. He's waiting for us." "A trap," Dmitri said. "A trap we have to walk into." Alexander crouched beside Emma. "The kill switch is in that vault. The proof of the bounty, the contracts, all of it. If we don't get it, we run for the rest of our lives. How long do we have before every hunter in Russia finds us?" "Sergei estimates 12 hours, maybe less. The bounty is spreading through the networks. Professional killers, mercenaries, even amateurs looking to get rich." Alexander's hand found hers. "We go in fast. We go in hard. We find the vault, and we burn everything inside it." "And Victor?" Alexander's eyes went cold. "Victor dies." The plane hit the ground with a bone-jarring crunch. The cargo bay door was already opening before they'd fully stopped, cold Russian air pouring in like a living thing. Emma grabbed her bag, medical supplies, a change of clothes, the gun Alexander had given her after the opera house. It felt heavier now, more real. 3 black SUVs waited on the cracked tarmac. Sergei stood beside the lead vehicle, smoking a cigarette, looking like he hadn't slept in days. "Welcome back to hell," he said as they approached. "You've stirred up a hornet's nest. Every criminal organization from Moscow to Vladivostok has your picture." "How bad?" Alexander asked. "Bad enough that I had to shoot 2 men on the way here. Low-level thugs. Thought they could collect the bounty." Sergei flicked his cigarette away. "The professionals won't be so easy." They loaded into the SUVs. Dmitri was placed in the second vehicle with 2 medics. Emma climbed into the lead car with Alexander and Sergei. The convoy pulled away from the airbase, headlights cutting through pre-dawn darkness. "Tell me about Kronstadt," Alexander said. "Soviet naval base. Built during the Cold War. Abandoned in the 90s. Ivanov bought it 10 years ago through shell companies, turned it into his command center." Sergei pulled up a map on a tablet. "One bridge access point, heavily fortified. Victor has maybe 50 men inside, all loyal to Ivanov's memory." "50 against what? 7 of us?" "6, Sergei corrected. "Dmitri can barely stand." "Then we need an advantage." Alexander studied the map. "What's the one thing Victor won't expect?" Emma looked at the fortress layout. Guard towers, reinforced gates, kill zones. It was designed to repel an army. "He won't expect us to surrender," she said quietly. Both men turned to stare at her. "Think about it," Emma continued. "He knows we need what's in that vault. He knows we're desperate. What if we walk up to the front gate and offer a trade?" "What trade?" Sergei asked. "Me." Emma met Alexander's eyes. "Victor knows I'm the one who killed Ivanov. He'll want revenge, personal revenge. So we give him what he wants. I walk in, you follow, and while he's focused on me, you find the vault." "Absolutely not," Alexander said flatly. "You have a better idea? Any idea that doesn't use you as bait?" "Alex." Emma grabbed his hand. "We're out of time and options. You said it yourself. We go in fast and hard. The fastest way in is through the front door." Sergei was nodding slowly. "She's right. Victor is emotional, vindictive. He'll want to gloat, want to make her suffer. That gives us a window." "A window where she gets tortured or killed," Alexander snapped. "I can handle it," Emma said. I've handled everything else. This is different. How? How is this different from the opera house, from the palace, from every other time you've asked me to walk into danger? Emma's voice rose. You said I was your partner, that we'd do this together, so let me do my part. Alexander stared at her. She could see the war happening behind his eyes, the need to protect her battling against the cold logic that said she was right. If anything happens to you, he started. Then you burn the fortress to the ground, Emma finished. I know. I'm counting on it. Sam. The Kronstadt fortress rose from the frozen Baltic like a malignant growth. Concrete walls 30 feet high, guard towers with searchlights. The single bridge leading to the island was a choke point, narrow, exposed, probably mined. The convoy stopped a kilometer away. Alexander was on his phone, speaking rapid Russian, negotiating. When he hung up, his face was grim. Victor agreed he'll let you walk across the bridge alone, unarmed. When you reach the gates, his men will take you inside. The rest of us wait here. How long do I need to buy you? 20 minutes. I have a team coming by boat, underwater approach. They'll breach the seawall while Victor is distracted. We find the vault, destroy the files, and extract. And me? Alexander pulled her close. You stay alive for 20 minutes, then I come get you. Emma nodded. She stripped off her coat, checked her pockets. Empty. They'd take everything anyway. All she had was her wits and whatever medical knowledge might keep her breathing if things went wrong. One thing, Alexander said. He pulled a small device from his pocket, a GPS tracker the size of a button. Swallow this. What? Swallow it. It's coded. Won't dissolve for 6 hours. If they move you, I can track you. Emma took the tracker and swallowed it dry. It caught in her throat, then went down. 20 minutes, Alexander said again, like a prayer. Emma started walking. The bridge was longer than it looked. Her footsteps echoed on the frozen asphalt. Wind cut through her thin shirt like knives. She kept her hands visible, kept her pace steady, didn't look back. Halfway across, the searchlights found her. Blinding white light pinned her in place. She stopped, raised her hands higher. Keep walking, a voice boomed from speakers on the walls. Slowly. Emma walked. The gates loomed ahead. Massive steel doors designed to stop tanks. They cracked open just wide enough for her to slip through. 4 men grabbed her the moment she was inside. Rough hands patting her down, checking for weapons, for wires. They found nothing. One of them zip-tied her wrists behind her back. The plastic bit into her skin. They dragged her through the fortress. Concrete corridors lit by flickering fluorescents. The smell of diesel fuel and gun oil. Men watching from doorways with dead eyes. She counted 20 visible guards, more out of sight. Alexander's team would be outnumbered 3-1 even if everything went perfectly. They brought her to what looked like an old command center. Computer banks along one wall, most of them dark. A single desk in the center of the room. And behind the desk, Viktor Kozlov. He was younger than Emma expected, maybe 40, well-dressed in a tailored suit. He looked more like a banker than a warlord, but his eyes were Ivanov's eyes, black and empty. Mrs. Vulov, Viktor said, standing, thank you for accepting my invitation. I didn't have much choice. No, you didn't. Viktor walked around the desk. Do you know what you took from me? A monster. Viktor's hand flashed out. The slap rocked Emma's head sideways. Pain exploded across her cheek. Blood filled her mouth. You took my father, Viktor said quietly. Emma's head snapped back to look at him. What? Nikolai Ivanov. My father. He raised me after my mother died. Taught me everything. And you poisoned him like a dog at a banquet. Viktor grabbed her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. So before you die, I want you to understand something. The bounty? The hunters? That's not revenge. That's business. This... He shoved her backward into a chair. This is personal. Emma's mind was racing. Viktor was Ivanov's son. That changed everything. This wasn't about territory or power. This was about a son watching his father die and wanting someone to pay. He tried to kill my daughter, Emma said. He was teaching you a lesson, the lesson my father learned too late, that Alexander Vulov destroys everything he touches. His parents, his partners, his wife. Viktor leaned close. How long do you think before he destroys you too? He won't. Because you love him? Victor laughed. Love is weakness. My father loved power, loved control, and it made him sloppy, made him underestimate the nurse with the poison. He pulled a knife from his belt, long, serrated, designed for maximum pain. 20 minutes, Victor said. That's what I promised your husband. 20 minutes of conversation before I decide what to do with you. So let's talk. Let's talk about how it felt to kill an old man, to watch him die knowing you caused it. Emma's wrists were screaming where the zip ties cut into them. Her cheek was swelling where he'd hit her, but she kept her voice steady. It felt like saving my family. Wrong answer. Victor pressed the knife against her throat. Not cutting, just pressure. Try again. Outside, somewhere in the darkness, Alexander was counting down the minutes. The underwater team was breaching the seawall. The clock was ticking. Emma had to buy them time. It felt like mercy, she said. Victor's eyes narrowed. Mercy? Your father was sick, diabetic, dying anyway. I just accelerated the process, made it painless. A heart attack is a kind death compared to what Alexander would have done if he'd gotten his hands on him. You're trying to make yourself the hero. I'm trying to tell you the truth. Emma looked up at him. Your father put a knife to my 7-year-old daughter's throat. He hired an assassin to kill me at a charity gala. He destroyed everything Alexander built just to watch him suffer. So yes, I killed him. And I'd do it again. Victor's knife hand trembled. For a moment, Emma thought he was going to cut her throat right there. Instead, he pulled back and punched her in the stomach. Emma doubled over, gasping. The chair tipped backward. She hit the concrete floor hard enough to see stars. 15 minutes left, Victor said, checking his watch. And you're already boring me. Alexander stood in the frozen water of the Baltic Sea, up to his chest, watching his team cut through the rusted seawall with thermal torches. The metal glowed orange, then white. It fell away in chunks. Go, he whispered. They slipped through the gap, 6 men in tactical gear moving through the flooded lower levels of the fortress. The water was black as oil, cold enough to kill in minutes. They had to move fast. Sergei led them to a maintenance shaft. They climbed, up through darkness and rust, up toward the command center where Emma was being held, where Victor was hurting her while Alexander counted seconds. 18 minutes gone. 2 minutes left. They reached a junction. Sergei consulted a schematic on his waterproof tablet. Vault is 2 levels down. Main computer core. That's where Ivanov would have kept his insurance files. Split up, Alexander ordered. Sergei, take 3 men and secure the vault. I'm going for Emma. Vulov, the mission is keeping my wife alive. Alexander checked his weapon. Find the files, destroy them, but if I'm not back in 5 minutes with Emma, you burn this whole place down anyway. Understand? Sergei nodded. Don't be stupid. Too late for that. They split. Alexander took 2 men and climbed toward the command center. His boots dripped seawater on the concrete steps. His lungs burned from the cold, but his mind was crystal clear, focused on one thing. Get to Emma. Walk. Emma was on her knees now, her hands still zip-tied behind her back. Blood dripped from her split lip onto the floor. Victor circled her like a shark. You want to know what the worst part is? Victor said. My father respected Alexander, feared him even. But you were nothing, a nurse, a single mother, collateral damage, and you killed him. Good, Emma spat blood. I'm glad he died knowing he was beaten by collateral damage. Victor kicked her in the ribs. Emma felt something crack. Pain lanced through her side. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Time's up, Victor said. 20 minutes is over. Your husband isn't coming. He's probably already dead. My men found his boat team 10 minutes ago. Emma's heart stopped. You're lying. Am I? Victor pulled out his phone, showed her a photo, bodies in the water, floating face down in tactical gear. No. So here's what happens next, Victor continued. I'm going to execute you. Film it. Send it to every news outlet in Russia. Let the world see what happens to people who kill Nikolai Ivanov. And then I'm going to find your daughter. And the door exploded inward. Not kicked open. Exploded. Breaching charge that blew the lock and part of the frame into shrapnel. Victor's guards spun toward the noise, raising weapons. Alexander came through the smoke like a demon. He shot the first guard before the man could aim. The second went down with a bullet through his throat. The third tried to draw, but Alexander was already moving, striking with the pistol, crushing the man's windpipe. 4 seconds. 3 guards dead. Victor grabbed Emma, hauling her up as a shield. His knife pressed against her throat, drawing a thin line of blood. "Drop it," Victor shouted. "Drop the weapon, or I cut her." Alexander froze. His pistol trained on Victor's head, but he couldn't take the shot, not without risking Emma. "The photo was fake," Alexander said calmly. "My team is fine, and right now they're in your vault destroying every piece of insurance your father left behind. You lost, Victor. It's over. It's not over until she's dead. Then you die half a second later," Alexander said, "and your father's legacy dies with you. Is that what you want? To be remembered as the man who threw everything away for revenge?" Victor's hand trembled. The knife pressed harder. Emma felt warm blood trickling down her neck. "He was my father," Victor said, his voice breaking. "I know," Alexander replied. "And Emma is my wife. We're at an impasse, so here's what's going to happen. You let her go. You walk away. You get to keep breathing. And the bounty? Canceled. The moment we destroy those files, the contracts are void. No one gets paid. The hunters go home." Victor was wavering. Emma could feel it in the tension of his grip. He wanted revenge, but he wanted to live more. 10 seconds, Alexander said. "Then my men upstairs start dropping explosives down the ventilation shafts. This whole fortress becomes your tomb. Choose." The knife pulled back. Just an inch. Just enough. Emma drove her head backward into Victor's nose, felt cartilage crunch. His grip loosened. She threw herself sideways, hitting the floor hard. Alexander's shot took Victor in the shoulder. Not lethal, not even close, but enough to spin him around and drop the knife. 2 of Alexander's men were on Victor in a heartbeat. Zip ties. Hands behind his back. He was screaming in Russian, thrashing, but he was contained. Alexander dropped beside Emma. His hands found the zip ties and cut them with a knife. Her hands were purple, where the circulation had been cut off. He helped her sit up, checking her injuries with frantic movements. "Your ribs?" "Cracked. Not broken. I can move." Emma grabbed his face. "The photo. The body's in the water." "Fake. Photoshop. He was trying to break you." Alexander pulled her into his arms. "I told you. 20 minutes. I came for you." Emma buried her face in his wet shirt. He smelled like seawater and gunpowder and safety. "We have to move," one of Alexander's men said from the doorway. "Sergei reports the vault is secure. Files are destroyed. But this place is about to get very loud." "Loud how?" Emma asked. An explosion rocked the fortress. Somewhere below them, something massive detonated. The lights flickered and died. Emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in red. "That kind of loud," the man said. Alexander hauled Emma to her feet. Her ribs screamed in protest, but she forced herself to move. They ran through corridors filling with smoke. Men were shouting, alarms wailing. The fortress was eating itself. They reached the breach in the seawall. The water was chest-high now, rising fast. Sergei was there with his team, all of them soaked and covered in soot. "Files?" Alexander asked. "Burned. Computer cores destroyed. Every backup fried. Ivanov's insurance is gone." Sergei looked past them. "But we triggered the facility's self-destruct. Soviet failsafe, thermite charges in the foundation. We have maybe 3 minutes before this place goes up like Chernobyl." They plunged into the black water. Emma's cracked ribs sent daggers of pain through her chest with every breath. The cold was immediate and devastating. Alexander kept one arm around her, pulling her through the gap in the wall. They surfaced outside the fortress. A boat was waiting, a rigid inflatable running dark. Hands pulled Emma aboard. She collapsed on the deck, shaking so hard her teeth rattled. "Go, go, go," Alexander shouted. The boat's engines roared. They skimmed across the black water, putting distance between themselves and the island. Behind them, Kronstadt erupted. The explosions came in sequence. First the lower levels, massive blasts that lit the night like daylight. Then the upper structure collapsed inward, falling into the holes the thermite had burned through the foundation. The whole fortress seemed to fold in on itself, disappearing into a crater of fire and concrete dust. Emma watched it burn, watched Ivanov's legacy turn to ash and smoke, watched Victor's revenge sink into the Baltic Sea. "Is it over?" she asked. "The bounty is gone," Alexander said. "No files means no contracts. The hunters have nothing to chase. So we're free. We're alive." Alexander wrapped her in a thermal blanket. "That's close enough." Bakshek. They didn't go back to the bunker. Too exposed. Too many variables. Instead, Sergei took them to a safe house on the outskirts of St. Petersburg, a nondescript apartment in a building that looked like it hadn't been updated since 1980. Dmitri was there, finally in a hospital bed that Sergei's people had set up in the main room. Real doctors were working on him now, stitching and transfusing. He looked like death, but he was smiling. "You made it," he said when he saw Emma. "Thanks to you." Emma sat on the edge of his bed. "You saved us. Again. I told you, I owe you. We're even now. Not even close." Alexander was in the corner with Sergei, getting a situation report. Emma couldn't hear what they were saying, but she could read Alexander's body language. Relief, exhaustion, the weight of survival. Her phone buzzed. A text from Nadia. 3 words. "We're coming home." Attached was a photo. Lily asleep in bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. Peaceful. Safe. Unaware of how close she'd come to losing both her parents, Emma's eyes burned. She was too tired to cry, too wrung out for tears. But the sight of her daughter safe in bed cracked something open in her chest. "Hey!" Alexander appeared beside her. He'd changed into dry clothes, but he still looked like he'd been through a war. "Nadia and Lily are catching a flight tomorrow. Private transport. They'll meet us in Helsinki." "Not New York?" "Not yet. We need to make sure the bounty is really dead. Make sure no one else got copies of Ivanov's files. Give it a week, make sure we're clear, then we go home." A week in Helsinki. A week to breathe. Alexander sat beside her. To let your ribs heal, to let Dmitri recover, to remember what it feels like to be safe. Emma leaned against him. He winced, his own injuries catching up with him. They were a mess. Broken and bruised and barely standing, but they were standing. "I need to tell you something," Emma said. "What?" "When Victor had that knife to my throat, when I thought you were dead, I wasn't scared. I was angry." She looked up at him. Angry that we'd come this far and it was going to end in that concrete room. Angry that Lily would grow up without us. Just angry. "Anger kept you alive." "No, you kept me alive. 20 minutes. You said 20 minutes? And you meant it." Emma's hand found his. "Every time you've asked me to trust you, to walk into danger, you've come through. Every single time." "I made a promise to you," Alexander said, "at that courthouse, that I would protect you. I'm just keeping my promise." "I think we're past promises now," Emma said. "I think we're into something else." "What?" "Partnership, real partnership. Not the contract we signed, not the deal we made. Something we chose." Alexander was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Not velvet, just a plain cardboard box that looked like it had been through hell. "I've been carrying this since New York," he said, "waiting for the right time. But there's never going to be a right time, so I'm just going to ask." He opened the box. Inside was a ring, not diamonds, not platinum, just a simple gold band etched with a pattern that looked like vines. "Emma, the first time I asked you to marry me, it was a transaction, a business deal. But everything since then, the opera house, the palace, the fortress, all of it showed me something I didn't expect." His voice was rough. "That I don't want a contract. I want you, as you are. Messy and brave and terrifying." Emma stared at the ring, at the man holding it. "Will you marry me again?" Alexander asked. "Not for protection, not for security, just because we choose each other. Every day, despite everything." Emma's cracked rib was screaming. Her face was swollen from Victor's beating. She was sitting in a Soviet-era apartment while doctors worked on her bodyguard in the next room. Nothing about this was romantic. "Yes," she said. Alexander slid the ring onto her finger. It fit next to the diamond from their courthouse wedding, past and present, transaction and choice. He kissed her. Gentle, because she was hurt, but fierce because they'd earned it. The door to the apartment burst open. Everyone reached for weapons, but it was just one of Sergei's men, breathing hard, eyes wide. "Boss," he said to Alexander, we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" "The kind where the entire Moscow Bratva just put out a counter bounty." Emma's blood went cold. "What does that mean?" "It means," Sergei said, appearing behind the messenger, "that someone in Moscow wants you alive, and they're offering 20 million rubles to whoever delivers you safely to their territory." "Who?" Alexander asked. "Didn't say, just coordinates. A meeting place. Neutral ground." The messenger handed over a tablet. "And they sent a message. Said to tell you that your father's debts are coming due." Alexander went very still. "My father's been dead for 2 years." Apparently someone disagrees. Emma looked at the ring on her finger, at Alexander's face draining of color, at the coordinates on the screen showing a location deep in Russian territory. They destroyed Ivanov's bounty. But someone else had just picked up where he left off, and whoever it was knew things about Alexander's family that even Emma didn't know. "We just finished one war," Emma said quietly. "I know," Alexander replied, "and now we're walking into another." "I know." Emma stood up. Her ribs protested. Her whole body protested. But she'd learned something in the last 72 hours. She'd learned that fear was just another enemy to beat, and she was getting very good at winning. "Then let's go to Moscow," she said. "Let's find out who's playing puppet master, and let's end this, for real this time." Alexander looked at her, at the woman who'd walked through fire for him, who'd killed for him, who'd chosen him despite every reason to run. "Together," he said. "Together," Emma agreed. Outside, the Russian sun was rising over St. Petersburg, pale, cold, unforgiving, and somewhere in Moscow, someone was waiting for them. End part 4. The fortress is destroyed. The bounty is dead. But just when they thought they could breathe, someone in Moscow throws down a new hand, and this time the stakes involve secrets from Alexander's past. Who wants them alive? What debts is this mysterious player collecting? Drop your theories in the comments. Tell me what state or country you're watching from. This story has gone global, and I want to see how far. Smash that like button and subscribe because part 5 is the finale. And everything you've watched so far has been leading to this moment. The coordinates led to a place that shouldn't exist. Emma stared out the window of the armored SUV as they drove through the outskirts of Moscow, watching the city transform from Soviet brutalism to something older, darker. The GPS showed they were heading toward an industrial district that had been abandoned since the 90s. Factories with broken windows, warehouses swallowed by rust and weeds. "This is wrong," Alexander said from the driver's seat. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. "My father never did business in Moscow. He hated this city." "Maybe that's why someone chose it," Sergei offered from the back seat. He was checking weapons, loading magazines with the methodical focus of a man who expected violence. Neutral ground, no memories, no ghosts. "Everything in Russia has ghosts," Alexander muttered. They'd left Dmitri in St. Petersburg with orders to evacuate Lily and Nadia if they didn't make contact within 6 hours. Emma had argued about coming along. Someone should stay behind, someone should be safe, but Alexander had shut that down fast. They were past the point of splitting up, past the point of safety. The SUV turned down a narrow road lined with dead trees. At the end stood a single building, a warehouse that looked like it had been used for grain storage decades ago. The roof sagged, the walls were tagged with faded graffiti, but there were fresh tire tracks in the mud. Someone had been here recently. "How many do you think are inside, Hinda?" Emma asked, checking the pistol Alexander had given her. She'd gotten better with it over the past week. Not good, but better. Could be 2, could be 20. Alexander parked 50 meters from the entrance. Could be empty and rigged with explosives. Optimistic as always. Realism kept me alive this long. They got out. The cold bit through Emma's coat immediately. Her ribs were still taped from Victor's beating, each breath a reminder of how fragile the human body was, how easily it broke. The warehouse door was unlocked. It swung open with a rusty groan. Inside was darkness, cut by shafts of weak daylight filtering through holes in the roof. The air smelled like rotting wood and old motor oil. Emma's eyes adjusted slowly. She could make out shapes, crates stacked against walls, an old forklift listing to one side, chains hanging from overhead beams. And in the center of the space, illuminated by a single battery-powered lantern, stood a woman. She was tall, maybe 60, with silver hair pulled back severe, and eyes that looked like they'd seen the worst humanity had to offer, and stopped being surprised. She wore a long coat over what looked like expensive clothing, not tactical gear, not business attire, something in between. "Alexander," the woman said. Her voice carried across the empty space like a blade. "You look like your father. Same eyes, same stupid pride. Who are you?" Alexander's gun was up, trained center mass. "Put that away. If I wanted you dead, you'd have been dead in St. Petersburg." The woman gestured to the space around her. "I'm unarmed, alone, and I have information you need." "That's not an answer." The woman smiled. It didn't reach her eyes. "My name is Katya Orlova, and I was your father's partner for 30 years before Nikolai Ivanov tried to have me killed." Emma felt Alexander's whole body go rigid beside her. "My father never mentioned a partner. Your father never mentioned a lot of things. That was part of our arrangement." Katya stepped closer to the lantern. In the better light, Emma could see scars on her face, thin white lines that looked like they'd been made with something sharp and precise. "Nikolai didn't just betray your father, Alexander. He betrayed all of us, the entire network. When your father exiled him, I went underground, disappeared, let everyone think I was dead." "Why surface now?" Sergei asked, his weapon also raised. "Because Nikolai's death opened a vacuum, and vacuums get filled by whoever's willing to be ruthless enough." Katya pulled a folder from her coat pocket and set it on a nearby crate. "I put out the counter bounty, not to harm you, to bring you here. Because the people trying to fill Nikolai's shoes are worse than he ever was." Alexander didn't move toward the folder. "What people?" "A collective. Former KGB. Former Bratva. They call themselves the Directorate. They've been consolidating power for 2 years since your father died. They think with Nikolai gone and you distracted in America, they can take everything. The shipping routes, the ports, the networks in 6 countries. "Let them have it," Alexander said flatly. "I'm done with this world." "You don't get to be done." Katya's voice turned hard. "Your father made deals, promises, debts that pass to you whether you want them or not. The Directorate knows this. They're coming for you, Alexander, not with bounties, with lawyers, with courts. They're going to use Russian law to seize everything your father built, everything you inherited. And when they're done bleeding you dry legally, they'll kill you just to tie up loose ends." Emma's stomach sank. "How long do we have?" "The paperwork was filed 3 days ago. You have maybe a week before the first judgments come down." Katya looked at Emma for the first time, really looked at her. "The American wife, the one who poisoned Nikolai. You've caused quite a stir." "I did what needed to be done." "I'm sure you did. But here's the problem. When you killed Nikolai, you didn't just kill a man. You killed a symbol. And symbols have power. The Directorate is using his death to rally every criminal organization that ever hated your husband's family. They're calling it revenge, justice, a holy mission." Katya's expression was grim. "You started a war bigger than you understand." "Then how do we end it?" Alexander asked. "You don't." Katya pushed the folder toward them. "You survive it. That folder contains proof, documented proof, that the Directorate has been laundering money through state banks, bribing federal judges, running weapons to embargoed countries, everything you need to destroy them legally. You take that to the right people in Moscow, people who still owe your father favors, and you bury them before they bury you." Alexander finally holstered his weapon and picked up the folder. He flipped through pages. Bank records, photographs, transcripts. His face got darker with each page. "This is treason-level material," he said quietly. "Where did you get this?" "I've been building this case for 2 years, ever since I realized the Directorate was real and growing." Katya's hand went to her pocket. Sergei's gun came up immediately. She moved slowly, pulling out a phone. "I'm dying, Alexander. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months at most. I don't care about money or power anymore. I care about making sure your father's legacy doesn't get perverted by these monsters." "You expect me to trust you?" "I expect you to be smart enough to see an opportunity." Katya set the phone down. "I've arranged a meeting tomorrow night, the Bolshoi Theater, private box during a performance. You meet with 3 men, Federal prosecutors who've been investigating the directorate but lack evidence. You give them this folder, they do the rest. And what do you get out of it? I get to die knowing I didn't let Nikolai's corruption outlive him. Katya turned to leave, then paused. One more thing. Your father left something for you, a safety deposit box in Geneva. The key is in that folder. I don't know what's inside, but he made me promise if anything happened to him, I'd make sure you got it. Why would he give it to you instead of me? Because he knew you'd run from this life. Knew you'd try to escape to America and pretend you were something else. Katya looked back at him. But you can't escape blood, Alexander. It follows you wherever you go. The only choice is whether you let it drown you or learn to swim in it. She walked out. Her footsteps echoed in the empty warehouse. A moment later, they heard a car engine start and fade into the distance. Emma, Alexander, and Sergei stood in silence. It could be a trap, Sergei said finally. Everything is a trap, Alexander replied. He was staring at the folder like it was a live grenade. The question is whether the trap is worth walking into. Emma took the folder from his hands and looked through it herself. The evidence was damning, names she recognized from news reports, amounts that made her head spin. If even half of this was real, the directorate wasn't just criminal. It was a state within a state. We go to the meeting, she said. Both men looked at her. We have 1 week before they legally destroy us, Emma continued. That's not enough time to run, not enough time to hide. We either fight or we spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. This isn't your fight, Alexander said. Stop saying that. Emma's voice was sharp. I killed Nikolai. I'm part of this whether I want to be or not. So we go to the meeting, we hand over the evidence, and we let the Russian government do what we can't, tear them down from the inside. Alexander looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Sergei, start making calls. Find out if Katya was telling the truth about these prosecutors. I want to know everything about them before we walk into that theater. On it. Sergei was already on his phone. Alexander pulled Emma aside. If this goes wrong, it won't. Emma, listen to me. If this goes wrong, you take Lily and you disappear. There's money in accounts Sergei knows about, enough to live comfortably anywhere in the world. You don't look back. I'm not leaving you. You will if I'm dead. Emma grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. You came for me every single time I needed you. At the opera house, at the palace, at the fortress. Every single time. So I'm going to do the same for you. We see this through together or not at all. Alexander's expression cracked. For just a second, the wolf disappeared and she saw the man underneath, scared, exhausted, barely holding together. I don't deserve you, he whispered. Probably not. But you're stuck with me anyway. The Bolshoi Theater was everything Emma had seen in pictures, and nothing like she expected. The building itself was magnificent, neoclassical architecture dripping with gold and history. But inside, the air felt heavy with tension. Everyone was watching everyone else. Every smile looked like it hid knives. They'd arrived early, dressed for the performance. Alexander in a dark suit that probably cost more than Emma's old apartment. Emma in a simple black dress that didn't scream wealth but didn't look cheap either. Sergei was somewhere in the building, watching exits, coordinating with the 3 men Alexander trusted in Moscow. Their box was on the 3rd tier, private, curtained, the kind of place where deals were made while the peasants watched ballet below. Emma sat beside Alexander, the folder in a leather bag at her feet. Her hand kept drifting to it, making sure it was still there. Making sure this was real. They're here, Alexander murmured. 3 men entered the box, all of them in suits, all of them with the hard eyes of people who'd seen too much. The lead man was tall, silver-haired, with a prosecutor's face, sharp and unforgiving. Mr. Vulov, the man said in English. I'm Alexei Morozov, federal prosecutor. These are my colleagues, Dmitry Sokolov and Ivan Petrov. You came, Alexander said. It wasn't quite a question. Your contact was very persuasive and very specific about what you had for us. Morozov sat down, his colleagues flanking him. I've been investigating the directorate for 18 months. Every time I get close, evidence disappears. Witnesses recant. Judges rule in their favor. They're protected at the highest levels. Not anymore. Alexander nodded to Emma. She pulled the folder from her bag and handed it to Morozov. He opened it, started reading. His expression didn't change, but his colleagues leaned in, reading over his shoulder. The silence stretched out. Below them, the orchestra was warming up. "Where did you get this?" Morozov asked quietly. "Does it matter?" "It matters if I'm going to use it in court, chain of custody, admissibility." "It came from someone who was there," Alexander said. "Someone who kept records because she knew one day they'd be needed. That's all you need to know." Morozov kept reading. He got to a page near the back and stopped. His face went pale. "This implicates a sitting minister." "I know. If I move on this, I'll be reassigned or killed." "Probably both," Alexander agreed. "But you'll also tear down the largest criminal network in Russia. Isn't that why you became a prosecutor?" Morozov closed the folder. He looked at his colleagues. Some wordless communication passed between them. Then he turned back to Alexander. "I'll need testimony. Witnesses. The documents are damning, but without corroboration, good lawyers can shred them." "I'll testify," Alexander said. "No." Emma's voice cut through. "We'll testify. Both of us." "Mrs. Vulov," Morozov started. "I was in St. Petersburg. I saw the fortress. I saw what Ivanov was building, and I know what the directorate is trying to do." Emma leaned forward. "You want witnesses? You've got two right here." Morozov studied her. "You understand what you're volunteering for? These people will try to kill you before trial. They'll go after your family, your daughter." "They've already tried," Emma said. "We're still here." Below them, the conductor raised his baton. The overture began, Swan Lake, appropriately enough. A story about transformation and curses and the price of love. Morozov put the folder in his briefcase and stood. "I'll start filing motions tomorrow morning. By evening, arrest warrants will be issued. This will move very fast once it starts." "Good," Alexander said. "Fast is what we need." "One more thing." Morozov paused at the curtain. "Your father. He was a complicated man. Did terrible things. But he also protected people like me. Prosecutors who actually wanted to do their jobs. When he died, a lot of us lost our shield. Maybe this is his way of taking care of us one last time." He left with his colleagues. The curtain fell back into place. Emma let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Is it done?" "Almost." Alexander pulled something from his pocket, a small brass key. "Katya said my father left something in Geneva. I need to know what it is before this all comes crashing down." "When?" "Tonight. There's a late flight. We can be there and back before the arrests start." Emma looked at him, at the exhaustion in his eyes, at the way he held that key like it was both a gift and a curse. "Then let's go find out what your father wanted you to know." Yates. The Geneva Safety Deposit Facility was the kind of place that catered to people who had secrets worth hiding, windowless, anonymous, the kind of security that made Fort Knox look amateur. They were escorted to a private viewing room by a woman who asked no questions and made no small talk. Alexander presented the key and a password Katya had provided. The box was retrieved and placed on the table. "I'll give you privacy," the woman said, and left. Alexander stared at the box. He didn't reach for it. "Do you want me to open it?" Emma asked. "I don't know what's inside. He could have left anything, money, weapons, evidence that destroys what's left of my family's reputation." "Or answers," Emma said gently. "Maybe he left you answers." Alexander took a breath and opened the box. Inside was a letter. A single envelope with Alexander's name written in careful Cyrillic script. Underneath was a photograph, old, faded, showing a young man who looked like Alexander standing beside a woman Emma didn't recognize. They were smiling, happy. Alexander picked up the letter with shaking hands and read it. Emma watched his face change as he moved through the pages, watched grief and understanding and something like peace settle over his features. When he finished, he set the letter down and just sat there. "What does it say?" Emma asked. "He knew," Alexander said quietly. "He knew Nikolai would come for me. Knew the directorate would rise. He spent the last 2 years of his life setting up safeguards, accounts in my name, properties I never knew existed, evidence against everyone who ever betrayed him." Alexander looked at Emma. "And an apology for raising me in this world, for not giving me a choice." "What about the woman in the photo?" "My mother. She died when I was 6. I barely remember her, but my father writes about her like she was everything." Alexander touched the photograph. He said she wanted me to have a normal life, wanted me to escape. That's why he sent me to American schools, why he tried to push me toward legitimate business. He was trying to honor her dying wish. Emma put her hand over his. He loved you, in his way. He destroyed me. In his way. Alexander's voice was thick. But maybe he also saved me, by giving me the tools to end what he started. There was one more item in the box, a USB drive. Alexander plugged it into his phone. Files appeared, hundreds of them. Names, transactions, recordings, everything Morozov would need to not just arrest the directorate, but dismantle them completely. He was building a case too, Emma said, scrolling through the files. For years. He knew he was dying, knew he didn't have time to finish it, so he left it for me. Alexander copied the files to his phone. We give this to Morozov. Combined with Katya's evidence, they can't fight this. They can't buy their way out. They left Geneva as the sun was rising. The flight back to Moscow was quiet. Emma dozed against Alexander's shoulder while he stared out the window at clouds that looked like battlefields. By the time they landed, the news was everywhere. Arrest warrants issued, assets frozen, 3 members of the directorate dead, shot while resisting arrest, the report said, though Alexander suspected at least 2 were executions to prevent testimony. Morozov called as they were driving back to the safe house. It's working. We've got 12 in custody. 4 more fled the country, but we'll get them. The minister resigned an hour ago. What do you need from us? Alexander asked. Depositions. Today, if possible. And then you disappear for a while. Let us clean this up. Let the trials happen. After that, you're free and clear. Free and clear, Alexander repeated, like he was testing how the words felt. They spent 6 hours giving statements. Emma described the fortress, the vault, Vanna's attack. Alexander laid out the network his father had built, how Ivanov had tried to steal it, how the directorate had tried to claim it after both men were dead. When they were finished, Morozov walked them to the door. You could have run, could have taken the money and disappeared. We tried running, Emma said. It doesn't work. The past always catches up. Well, your past is about to become Russia's most public trial in a decade. Thank you for not making me fight this alone. They drove back to St. Petersburg in silence. The city looked different now, less threatening, or maybe Emma was just too tired to be afraid anymore. Lily was waiting at the safe house with Nadia. The moment she saw them, she ran. Alexander caught her mid-leap, spinning her around while she laughed. Emma joined the embrace, her cracked rib protesting, but not caring. Did you win? Lily asked. Yeah, baby, Alexander said, his voice rough. We won. Can we go home now? Alexander looked at Emma over Lily's head. Home. They'd spent so much time running, fighting, surviving. Did they even have a home anymore? Yes, Emma said firmly. We can go home. Well said. Home turned out to be a small house in upstate New York. Not the estate. Not the fortress. Just a simple farmhouse on 20 acres with a barn that had been converted into a studio where Lily could practice piano without neighbors complaining. It took 3 months to settle. 3 months of debriefings, depositions, testimony via secure video link. 3 months of watching the directorate trial dominate Russian news. 3 months of learning how to be normal. Emma went back to school, finished her nursing degree online. It felt strange at first, studying trauma response and patient care after she'd lived through more trauma than most nurses would see in a career. But it also felt right, like she was reclaiming something she'd lost. Alexander was different now, quieter. He'd sold off most of his father's empire, keeping only the legitimate businesses. He worked from home, video conferences and emails, no more late nights in the city, no more private jets to places that didn't ask questions. Dmitri recovered fully. He visited once a month, bringing gifts for Lily and updates on Sergei's crew in St. Petersburg. They were thriving without the directorate's shadow. Business was good in the new Russia. Greg sent a postcard from Barcelona. No return address, just 3 words. Thank you. Goodbye. Emma burned it. One evening in late spring, Emma found Alexander in the barn watching Lily practice. She'd gotten good, really good. Her fingers danced over the keys like they were having a conversation. She's going to be better than any teacher we could hire, Alexander said. She's going to be whatever she wants to be, Emma corrected. She sat beside him on the old sofa they'd dragged in. How are you doing? With what? With all of it. The quiet. The normal. Alexander was quiet for a long moment. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for someone to kick in the door, for the past to show up with a gun. It's not coming. The trials are over. The directorate is gone. We're free. Are we? Alexander looked at her. Can we ever really be free of what we did? What we became? Emma thought about the gun she'd fired at Vanna, about the insulin cartridge she'd swapped, about all the lines she'd crossed to protect her family. No, she said honestly. We carry it, but we don't let it define us. We choose who we are now, every day. That's the only freedom that matters. Lily finished her piece with a flourish and spun around on the bench. How was that? Perfect, they said together. Can I get the puppies now? You promised puppies? Alexander laughed. Actually laughed. Yes, we can get the puppies. 2 golden retrievers joined the family a week later. Chaos and joy in equal measure. They ate shoes and knocked over furniture and made Lily so happy she cried. Emma took a job at the local hospital. Part-time. Emergency room. She was good at it. Her experience with high-pressure situations translated well to trauma care. Her colleagues didn't know about St. Petersburg or Geneva or any of it. She was just Emma, a nurse with a quiet husband and a daughter who played piano. On their first wedding anniversary, the real one, from the courthouse a year ago, Alexander took Emma to the place where it all started. The small office where they'd signed papers and made promises neither of them fully understood. I brought you something, he said, pulling out a folded piece of paper. Emma opened it. It was the original marriage contract, the one that had laid out terms and conditions and exit clauses. I want to burn it, Alexander said. If you'll let me. Emma looked at the contract, at the clause that said she could leave at any time, at the provision about financial support for Lily, at all the legal protections that had felt so important a year ago. Yes, she said, let's burn it. They used the fireplace in the living room, watched the paper catch and curl and turn to ash, watched the contract that had brought them together dissolve into nothing. So what are we now? Emma asked as the last embers died. Married, Alexander said simply. Not because we have to be, because we choose to be. Every day? Every day. Emma kissed him. It tasted like freedom. Max. 5 years later, Emma was in the garden pulling weeds when she heard the piano. Not Lily's usual practice. Something different. Slower. Sadder. She walked to the barn and found her daughter playing a piece Emma didn't recognize. What's that? Emma asked. Something I wrote, Lily said without stopping. It's called The Fortress. For you and Papa. Emma listened. The melody was haunting, beautiful and broken at the same time. It sounded like survival. When Lily finished, Emma was crying. Did I mess up? Lily asked, worried. No, baby. It's perfect. It's exactly right. Alexander appeared in the doorway. He'd been working in the vegetable garden, dirt under his fingernails, looking more like a farmer than the man who'd once controlled shipping routes across 3 continents. Play it again, he said to Lily. She did, and this time they listened together, the 3 of them. The family that had been forged in violence and refined in peace, the family that had survived. When the last note faded, Alexander pulled out his phone. He showed Emma a news article. The final member of the directorate had been sentenced, 25 years. The network was officially dead. It's over, he said. Really over. Emma took his hand, felt the new ring on his finger, the one from their second wedding, the one they'd chosen together, felt the calluses from farm work and the strength that hadn't left despite the quiet life. No, she said. It's not over. It's just beginning. That night, after Lily was asleep and the puppies, now full-grown dogs, were settled, Emma and Alexander sat on the porch watching stars appear in the darkening sky. Do you ever miss it? Emma asked. The adrenaline, the power. No, Alexander said immediately. Then, more honestly, sometimes. But then I remember what it cost. What it almost cost. We paid a hell of a price. We did. But look what we bought. He gestured to the house, to the life they'd built. Peace, safety, a daughter who writes music instead of witnessing murder. Emma leaned against him. Was it worth it? Every scar, every nightmare, every drop of blood. Alexander kissed the top of her head. Because it led here, to this porch, to this life, to you. They sat in silence as night fell completely. Somewhere in the house, Lily was dreaming. Somewhere in Russia, the last trials were concluding. Somewhere in the past, younger versions of themselves were walking into an opera house, a palace, a fortress, walking into hell and somehow walking back out. But here, now, on this porch in upstate New York, they were just a family. Just two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and chosen to stay together in the best possible ones. Emma thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Broke, alone, desperate. That woman wouldn't recognize who she'd become, wouldn't believe the things she'd done, the strength she'd found. But that was the thing about survival. It changed you. Not always for the worse. Sometimes it just burned away everything that wasn't essential, leaving only what mattered. I love you, Emma said into the darkness. I know, Alexander replied. I love you too. It wasn't poetry. It wasn't even particularly romantic, but it was true. And after everything they'd survived, truth was the most valuable currency they had. The stars wheeled overhead. The dog snored on the porch. Inside, Lily dreamed of music and puppies and a world that would never hurt her because her parents had already fought those battles and won. And in the quiet of that perfect night, Emma Vulov, former nurse, former trophy wife, survivor of opera houses and palaces and fortress sieges, finally let herself believe that maybe, just maybe, they'd earned their happy ending. Not because endings were guaranteed, not because they'd paid enough or suffered enough, but because they'd chosen it. Together. Every single day. And that choice, that daily decision to keep building instead of running, to keep loving instead of hiding, that was the only victory that mattered, the only one worth dying for, the only one worth living for.